Welcome to r/Am I the Jerk, where OP's parents demand $250,000. My parents demanded $250,000 to buy a house. I had dinner with my family a week ago. It was to celebrate my younger sister for getting into medical school. We are 10 years apart in age. The first 15 minutes into dinner, my parents asked me for $250,000 so they could downsize and buy a house. They're retired. First, I don't have that amount of cash lying around, and I told them I'd have to sell my investments to raise that amount of cash, and I don't want to pay taxes. Then I told them to sell their current house first, come live with me, and then buy another house using the money they received from their previous house. It all seemed fine until my mom started to criticize me about money later. She may resent me for not buying her much stuff when I first had a real job. I make mid-six figures, but I've also had to pay back almost $160,000 in loans. She said that I don't give enough to her for her birthday and that I don't see her as anything. She also said I never was generous to her anyway, so she didn't expect me to give her any money. To be honest, I gave her $50, but I also take them out to dinner every month even though I hate it. They're extremely negative people, always bickering, and just overall will bring your happiness level down for a day or two, but I do it because they're my parents. Always talking to me about divorce. Anyway, am I in the wrong here for denying them the money, and should I be more generous to them? I feel like a burden to them up until the point I made money. I'm the father of two grown daughters. First off, I don't want to say that I would never ask my kids for money, but it would have to be a really dire situation. I mean really bad, like horrible. And then, what's wrong with your mother? She keeps tabs on the value of your presents? Who does that? She's a grown woman. She can get her own stuff. I love my kids and my kids love me. We like to spend time together. But for my last birthday, I got a book. And for Christmas, it was a voucher for bowling with the two of them. And I liked the book and I love to go bowling with them, period. Your mother is not only a negative person, there's something really wrong with her self-esteem and her perception of her and her personal relationships. Am I the jerk for not letting my husband put a Peloton in our sunroom? My husband, who's 32, and I, 31 female, live in a modest 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house. We don't have kids, so it's just the two of us and our dog. We've had the house for years now and have designated personal spots in the house. The biggest bedroom is our room. The medium-sized bedroom is a guest room, and my husband uses the dresser in it for his clothes. And the smallest of the bedrooms is my husband's room/man cave, as one may call it. We also have a sunroom, which for the most part has been dedicated as mine. It's a bit of a larger space and is our means to our backyard. We use it a lot for entertaining, but I took control of the decor and the vibe of the room. About a third of the room I have made into a little yoga/Pilates studio. I have plants everywhere and all of my equipment is coordinated to the decor. A great little zen spot if I do say so myself. And the other 2/3 of the room has a sofa and a table and the door to the backyard. My husband's family has a traveling Peloton bike. It's been with his parents, then to us, then with his brother, and now it's traveling back to us. I personally don't like it, but my husband thinks it's a good workout. Anyway, he says he's going to put it in the sunroom. I told him no, and said he could put it in the guest room, his room, or the garage. He says that the sunroom has the most space for it, and it's the nicest room in the house, so it will be nice for him to work out in there. Now, for those of you who have seen a Peloton bike in person, they aren't the sleekest. It's big and clunky, and it's black. And one, it doesn't fit the bright, light, natural sanctuary I made the room to be. And two, the space he wants to put it in is awkwardly right in the middle of the room, blocking the path to the back door. And since we've had it before, I know what it looks like and the inconvenient space that it takes up, which is part of the reason we gave it away the first time. It's not like I said he couldn't put it in the house at all. I gave him other options. So, am I the jerk for not letting my husband put a Peloton in our sunroom? Why does your husband use the guest room dresser for his clothes? OP. He uses the dresser in the guest room because that's what he wanted to do. He had the option of putting a second dresser in the master, a dresser in his room, or using the guest room, and he chose the guest room. And as for me decorating the room, that was me elaborating on our dedicated spaces. He designed his man cave and picked the furniture in the guest room for that matter. I designed the sunroom and we did the rest of the house together. Info. Where was it before and why can't it go there again? OP. It was in the guest room. He didn't like it in there. He wanted it in the sunroom because he thought there was more space and he liked that he could crawl off the bike and almost immediately get fresh air in the backyard. At the time, I did not have my yoga/Pilates set up. Not the jerk. He has a room designated his man cave. Why can't it go in there? It sounds like you've divided the house. He has the man cave and you have the sunroom. Offer him to take the sunroom if you can have the man cave and switch the furniture. See what his reaction is then. Not the jerk. This isn't about what's the best use of this room. It's about where are we allowed to have our own spaces. He's spread out to 2 other bedrooms. He even has an entire room to himself, the man cave. You want a space for your communal living. That's having friends over and having a yoga space. Yoga is often a group activity. Update. For anyone who cares, he put the Peloton in the sunroom. It's not in the middle of the room as it was before. He did put it in the corner, next to my Pilates equipment. I asked why he couldn't put it in his room, and he said that there was no room. I asked why he couldn't put it in the guest room, and he said he would, but we need to clear stuff out first. That weekend, I did a major clean out of the guest room, cleaning out things we didn't need and rearranging the room to make space for the Peloton. When I showed him the space for the bike, he said, "But it's workout equipment. It should go with the workout stuff." I explained, pointing to his man cave, "This is your space, and the portion of the sunroom is my space. I don't put things in your space, and I would not like the bike in mine." He said, "But you can use the Peloton." Now I'm not going to use it. I don't like it, and the principle of it being in the spot I didn't want it, I definitely won't use it. Is it petty? Yes. Am I proud? Also yes. To add, we recently got a new coffee table, and he pushed the old one off to the side. I asked my husband to help me move it into the garage until we can find a way to dispose of it. He kept saying later, and 3 weeks later, I decided I can do it myself. It was a bit large and heavy, but it's on wheels, so pretty easy. I may or may not have lost control of the coffee table around a corner and may or may not have put a tiny hole in the wall. There's no hard evidence that it was me. So now I stare at the Peloton in my space and debate if I A. try to move it myself, B. suck it up and leave it where it is, or C. start a fire, collect the insurance money, and never see the bike again. And for those who don't understand sarcasm, that was a joke. I'm obviously not going to leave it in the sunroom. Thank you to everyone who replied and invested in my first world problem. It was very much appreciated. OP's husband is being a selfish jerk. No amount of moving the Peloton or her Pilates equipment is going to change that. He has a whole man cave and decides to use the guest room and his wife's space. I wouldn't be surprised if there's other issues that OP is ignoring. I would be telling him that he has 24 hours to remove it before it goes on Facebook Marketplace. So glad my husband treats me like an equal person worthy of respect. Yeah, this isn't about the bike. It's about him being an inconsiderate, selfish jerk. $50 says this isn't the only thing he's inconsiderate about, and the Peloton is just the last straw. He's got a man cave? No, he's been relegated to a tiny room in the house while she gets to occupy the huge sunroom in the best part of the house. He can't even keep his clothes in the master bedroom because she's taken up all of the space and gave him the option of add more wardrobe space or put your stuff elsewhere. She's definitely the jerk. This is why I have no interest in having a husband or living with men in general. I have yet to meet one that doesn't create more work for me. My make roommates are supposed to be moving out by Christmas, and I'm just counting down the days. Oh, you meant male roommates. I got you. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. Why on earth would anyone want to put a Peloton with the rest of the workout equipment in the biggest room of the house? You should definitely put it in the smallest bedroom of the house that you have to keep all your other stuff in. Am I the jerk for blocking my ex when she broke up with me? I'm 19 male. My ex-girlfriend, who's 20, of 3 years, broke up with me Sunday night over text. She told me that she felt like my lack of ambition was holding her back, and she needed to move on with her life because she felt like I didn't value her. When she sent me that, I just sent, "Okay," and I blocked her, and I fell asleep shortly after. I did not block her friends, and I had loads of messages yesterday morning when I woke up. They were asking me to unblock her and talk to her. My sister, who's 20, is also friends with my ex-girlfriend, and she told me that my ex was hurt by my sudden blocking and that she still wanted to talk to me for closure and wanted to make sure I was okay. I told my sister that I was okay and that I didn't want to talk to my ex, but would like it if she could tell her I appreciate her checking on me. My sister was not happy with this and told me that it was a hard decision for my ex and she just wants to talk to me. I again told her I was fine and that I'd rather not. My sister then told me that I'm acting insanely calm for being broken up with someone that I was with for 3 years. I again told her I was fine. She asked if I cried, and I told her that I didn't, and I just fell asleep listening to music. My sister told me that she's concerned about my lack of emotion and told me that my behavior isn't normal. I told her I'm not obligated to cry over anything, and I think it's weird that she was acting like I was. My sister once again told me that it wouldn't hurt to have one conversation with my ex because she was still worried about me and wanted to stay friends. I once again told her that I was fine and didn't want to talk to her. She told me that my lack of compassion is psychotic. That ticked me off, so I just started ignoring her, and she eventually left me alone. This morning when I woke up, my sister sent me a bunch of text messages again, so I just blocked her. And because of this, she went and told our parents, and they're upset with me for blocking my ex without communicating first. They said that we've been together long enough, and they thought of her as a second daughter. I was just aggravated at this point and told them that I'd appreciate if they mind their own business, but they didn't stop, so I told them that I wouldn't hesitate to block them too if they continue, which caused them to stop. They apologized to me and told me that they didn't mean any harm, but just felt like it was a little inconsiderate of me to just block her without talking about it first, but they won't press me to talk to her if I don't want to. She says she doesn't want to date you, and then she's mad when you cut contact? She can't have it both ways. She dumped you. She chose to end it. She's a huge jerk for making her inability to deal with her emotions about the breakup your problem. Like, why should you babysit her emotions when she dumped you? Not the jerk. Your girlfriend said she was done with you. You told her okay. Your girlfriend doesn't need closure, and how you're handling your breakup is none of your sister or your family's business. Am I the jerk for breaking up with my girlfriend because she's friends with a guy who cheated with her? My girlfriend has this male friend. Let's call him Mike. Mike is recently divorced. The other night I was hanging out with some of my girlfriend's friends. My girlfriend wasn't there, by the way. One of her friends brought up Mike and how the divorce has been hard on him. Another friend said that it was his own fault for hooking up with my girlfriend. I was like, what? I asked for more details, and it turns out that Mike hooked up with my girlfriend while he was married. His wife found out, and then they divorced. This happened about 1.5 years ago. I've been with my girlfriend for about 1 year. I talked to my girlfriend the next time I saw her. I took a couple of days to digest the information. I did text her that I needed some time for myself, and I'll talk with her when I'm ready. Next time we meet up, I decided to break up with her. See, she was still close friends with Mike, and they hang out regularly, both group and one-on-one. I wasn't crazy about it, but I figured I should trust my girlfriend until now. I realized I was too uncomfortable with their friendship now, as well as the fact that she never mentioned this to me. She asked why, and I told her the truth. I told her I don't like that she's friends with Mike with this new information, and that I wasn't going to tell her who she can be friends with, but I'm not going to be a part of this. My girlfriend yelled at me and said that if I had asked, she would stop hanging out with Mike. I still decided to break up, but to be honest, I don't think my girlfriend would take me back even if I changed my mind in that moment. I guess my question is twofold. Am I the jerk for my reason to break up with her? And am I the jerk for not asking her to cut off Mike or giving her a chance to? It's a bit late now, but I'd still like to know. Your ex-girlfriend is a home wrecker. Move on and find someone better. I can promise you right now, if you had began with, I know what you did with Mike, if you want this relationship to work, you need to cut him loose, she'd have thrown a fit and said that you're controlling and insecure. You took that whole conversation out of the equation and dropped her, hence her insistence that she would have dropped him as a friend if you had asked. You dodged a bullet, my friend. The fact that she was willing to hook up with a married man is ample evidence that she'd do the same to you as well. Neighbor threatens to sue me. I played a reverse Uno. I recently moved into a neighborhood in Michigan. One of my neighbors, we'll call him Bob, came over to introduce himself. He told me that he has a special needs son that lives with him. The son is in his 30s with significant mental disabilities. Bob first asked if I would mind keeping dangerous things out of my yard, like not leaving chainsaws or something unattended. That's pretty reasonable. But then he proceeded to tell me that I needed to keep my garage door down at all times, or I had to lock up anything dangerous if I wanted to keep them up, like all gasoline, sharp tools, fertilizers, etc. Oh, also any beer or other drinks, like in my garage fridge. I also need to keep my door locked at all times, or else his son may wander into my house. Then Bob tells me that now that I've been warned, if his son gets into anything, I'm now liable to be sued by him. And I told Bob in no uncertain terms that he was to control his kid. And if that his kid came into my house and broke stuff, I'd absolutely sue him and he'd absolutely pay. Later, I met the other neighbors and recounted this tale. They all got the same lecture from Bob when they moved in, and they just said, "Okay, Bob," and ignored it. They all think I handled it wrong and that I should have just let Bob think that everything was good. They think I'm being a jerk to Bob by not letting him believe he didn't have anything to worry about. Not the jerk. That kid is Bob's responsibility, not yours. I will suggest putting up no trespassing signs and cameras. I would go a step further and send Bob and his son an official notice of trespass. I'd also inform Bob that I'd be contacting the authorities should his son be wandering alone without a caretaker. That's not good for the son's safety, especially considering he looks like an adult, and strangers will react as such. Not the jerk, OP. Stepsister destroyed my books, gets her trip canceled. I'm 16, female. My dad married my stepmom 2 years ago. She has a daughter who's 16 called Bianca. Bianca and I don't like each other. She thinks I'm a spoiled brat and that I have a princess complex because both my parents came from money and I always get what I want. This is by no means true at all. While my parents bought me lots of things, I have a part-time job and keep my grades up to earn everything I ask for. One of the things I love the most are books. Fantasy, romance, crime, mystery, I love them all. My mom and I share this hobby, so we're always buying books and reading them together. I also have a Nintendo Switch and a TV in my room. Aside from my laptop and my phone, those are my most prized possessions. My sister is always asking to borrow my things, clothes, makeup, my Switch, or my books. I let her use the first three because I don't really care, but when it comes to my books, I don't let anybody else have them. A few weeks ago, she came and asked me to take one or two because she saw the guy she likes reading The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and I happen to have that book, though I've still yet to read it. I said no, and we had a discussion because I was so spoiled to share. She asked again by dinner, and I said no. Then she asked by breakfast and tried to get my dad and stepmom in. Both of them agreed with me. I sent her a few links of the book on discount, and I thought that was it. But 3 days ago, when I came back from my mom's house, I found 7 of my books, including the one she wanted, ripped to pieces. Some big chunks of my wallpaper missing, and a few posters on the floor all destroyed. It was no mystery. As soon as I told my dad and stepmom, they knew it was her and grounded her. She was supposed to go to LA in June for her birthday, but her mom said she wasn't going to be paying for it, and since her dad won't either, he's a deadbeat, then she'll pretty much just miss it, since some for the money will be mine to replace all the things she destroyed, and the rest will be kept as punishment. She's now losing it on me and calling me every name under the sun because I ruined her trip and the guy has been talking to another girl. You know you're not the jerk. Your stepmom sounds awesome, considering she's making her daughter face consequences for her behavior instead of enabling it. OP. I was confident I was not the jerk, but some of my friends said that I went too far for some books because I can always replace them and that it was not that big of a deal compared to her trip because that was for her birthday. No, they're wrong. It doesn't matter what the items were. That's irrelevant. She destroyed things that didn't belong to her and now she's facing the consequences. Not only that, but they were destroyed deliberately to hurt OP. Her stepsister likely needs counseling on better anger resolution. You didn't go too far. I don't think it was mentioned, but I have a feeling that you weren't the one who decided this punishment. You just had your property destroyed. It was your father and stepmother who made this decision. It is completely possible that even if you told your parents that she didn't have to replace it, they still wouldn't allow her to go because she did something awful and they have to discipline her to help her realize that she did wrong and to help ensure she doesn't do this again. Next time, remind your friends of this. Let them know that you didn't decide the punishment, and if they feel you just shouldn't have said anything after your room was destroyed, if they say you shouldn't have let your parents know and let your sister get away with doing this, then you may want to think deeper into those friendships. Not the jerk. You've done nothing wrong in this, and neither have your parents, in my opinion. I called roadside assistance today. Note that I am a physically capable adult male. Mildly relevant. I blew out a tire while driving this afternoon. Pulled off the busy road to a side street to assess the damage and start working on repairing the flat with the spare from the trunk. It turned out that the lug wrench provided in this particular car was absolutely tiny and thus provided very little leverage. Try as I might, I only managed to loosen one of the 5 lug nuts holding the tire on. No problem, I thought, as I have roadside assistance coverage on my auto insurance. A short call later, my insurance has dispatched a local service provider, and I receive a text stating that Daryl from the local provider will be arriving at my location by 2:34 p.m. That's less than a half-hour wait, so I'm pretty happy. At 2:33 p.m., a van approaches. The driver waves at me and pulls over. Driver immediately hops out with a toolkit in hand. We exchange brief pleasantries, and I explain my problem. Driver smiles and tells me the same thing happened to him last month and says not to worry about it. He takes out a proper wrench. I hand him the jack and spare, and he has my car back in operation in about 6 minutes flat. It was at this point when the conversation got a bit muddled. I asked him if he needs anything from me, like a signature, to ensure he gets paid. He responds that no money is necessary. I try to clarify my question and explain that I have roadside assistance on my policy, and that my insurer got him dispatched to me, and that I think they will pay his employer for the service call. His response? "Oh, no one dispatched me. I was just driving by and thought you could use some help." "So, you're not Daryl?" "Nope, Brian." I can't believe that I handed this guy my jack and just watched him crank up my car while lying on the frozen pavement. I don't even remember how many times I apologized. Guy wouldn't even let me hand him some cash. He just left in full cheer and told me to pay it forward. Aftermath. I waited another 10 minutes for Daryl, but gave up and left after finding his employer's phone number and canceling the help request. My insurer had been sending me automated texts all day along the lines of, "Has your service provider arrived yet? Reply Y if yes, N if no. Has your service been completed yet? And how likely are you to recommend this service provider from 1 to 10? I can't figure out how to respond in such a way that no one gets in trouble or over or underpaid. Anyways, thanks, Brian. Am I the jerk for refusing to pay more for a salon service than initially quoted? I was visiting LA and booked a full head of highlights, $500, with a well-known colorist. Yes, it's pricey, but hey, when in Rome. I was quoted $500 and 3 hours when I booked the appointment online. Then the series of events went like this. I get to the appointment on time. I work remotely and took the day off to make this work. They inform me that they may not have the supplies to color my hair, but they are waiting for a delivery. We start the appointment 30 minutes late. I'm irritated, but at this point, I'm just happy to not have to reschedule. I tell the colorist I want to go as blonde as possible. For context, I have 2-month grown-out golden blonde, professionally done highlights. My hair is not thick, curly, or long. I've been told my hair is fine, but I have a lot of it. We make a game plan. She says she can't get me platinum today as it could damage, but we'll get as close as we can. She and her assistant go through foiling my hair. I've been getting salon highlights for about 20 years. From what I can tell, I'm getting a full head of highlights. At times, she stops to help other clients and comes back to me. At this point, I realize I'm going to be there all day. It's fine. After the hair is processed, they do a treatment in the shampoo bowl. I think it was a conditioning treatment. I wait another 30 minutes while that sits, followed by a gloss, sitting another 10 minutes, shampoo and blowout. I'm there for 5 hours, annoyed but didn't say anything and just happy to be done. I'm happy about the result. She mentions that she's surprised how much my hair lifted, but it's likely because it's in good condition. I pay the $500 with my card on file and tip 20% in cash. She tells me when I'm back in LA to book again and she can get me lighter. Great. I decide not to book that day just so I can see how it looks over the next few weeks. I leave excited with my new hair. 20 minutes later, I have a voicemail from the salon saying they undercharged me. The price wasn't $500. It's actually $1,000 for the service I had. I'm shocked. I freeze my credit card so they're unable to charge anything else. They start texting me saying that the colorist was so busy she forgot to mention it to the front desk. They keep calling. I'm annoyed now since we never discussed a price increase, never mind 2 times what was originally quoted. Am I the jerk for refusing to pay? I had intended to sleep on it and just message them back in the morning with feedback on how this is bad business, but they can charge my card. But now I really don't want to pay it. It would have been bad enough had they tried to charge me $1,000 when checking out, but I was already done at this point. Also, if it was $100 more or something, sure, whatever, mistakes happen. But double the initial price? And I wasted my whole day off there, most of it waiting around for color to process. As far as I know, it wasn't more work for her. Not the jerk. They didn't tell you before the service. They didn't tell you after the service. They didn't even tell you while you were still there. They only caught it after they told you everything was done. They did it once they realized she's a tourist. You tend to get upcharged when they know you won't be back, but this is very shady. Sorry, but they shouldn't have told her after the service. If they didn't tell her beforehand, they had no right to the upcharge. A professional should be able to accurately quote their services once you're in the chair. Price can be adjusted at that point once they know what they're up against. Total jerk move. Not the jerk. I've had a stylist make comments while coloring my hair that it was taking more bleach and more dye than expected. My hair was very short and just drinking the product. She had to get someone else who didn't have gloves covered in product already to open more things for both the bleach and the dye. The charge when the service was done was higher than originally quoted, but it wasn't fully double, and I already knew the service took more product than was in the original quote. OP is not the jerk. That salon is trying to commit theft if they're changing the price that late and just trying to charge the card anyway. If they at least said it while OP was still at the salon, they could have discussed and possibly met in the middle. But there is no excusing trying to charge that much extra after OP left. Entitled mom demands I wake up everybody in college dorm because her daughter needs to do laundry. This happened in late 2015 on my college campus. Cast: we've got me, first-time resident assistant in co-ed upperclassmen dorm building. We've got entitled kid, the jerk resident. She was a sophomore on the women's soccer team. We've got entitled soccer mom, entitled kid's mother. We've got grad assistant, my direct supervisor within res life. For context, for those who aren't familiar, RAs are college students who are responsible for dealing with issues their fellow resident students experience in the dorms. We enforce university policies, generally try to keep the peace, and keep everybody safe and healthy. A group of 4 girls on the soccer team lived catty-corner to me, across the hall, down one room. They threw loud parties every week, and their guests often trashed our floor, as well as threw drinks on my door, ripped down my flyers, etc. I was incredibly chill, and at most broke up their parties after issues. 2 warnings when I could hear them playing beer pong, through my own closed doors, with headphones in. Never really called in campus security because I didn't want to be petty or make enemies. I had a pretty wild party life on the DL, and didn't want to lose my job/free housing. And thankfully, karmic justice was served. I got a text from entitled kid one day saying she saw a dead bug in her room. She sent me a picture, and I suspected it was a bed bug. I'd had them before in my own home, so I knew. I immediately reported it to the res life director, and fumigation was scheduled for the next day. This meant that entitled kid's whole suite had to be clear out for 3 days, as well as the residents across from, next to, above, and beneath them. My roommates and I got to stay put. They were also advised to deep clean their rooms, wash all textiles in hot water, etc. I break the news to entitled kid and her roommates in a group chat, and crap immediately hits the fan. Not half an hour later, my supervisor, GA, a super cool, mildly mannered, level-headed guy who just wanted to finish grad school and help college students, knocks on my door, asking me to help out with the situation. Entitled kid's mother is raising heck in her daughter's room. She's fuming about having to drive out in the middle of the night, 10 p.m.-ish. She lives in the next town over, like 15 minutes away, to help her daughter clear out of these disgusting, squalid conditions. They have the door propped open so they can schlep all the personal belongings into the hallway and out to their cars. Entitled mom is speaking very loudly, and it echoes in the hallway and stairwell, disturbing the heck out of anybody in a 2-room radius. She goes on and on about being a social worker and knowing how bed bugs work and how horribly inconvenient and traumatic this whole situation was for her kid. And this all couldn't have come at a worse time because the girls have a game tomorrow and they need their rest. In the midst of all this, grad assistant and I just stand by to show support and presence as university employees. We let entitled mom know that we're sorry for this massive inconvenience and happy to help with whatever we can to make this easier, but a lot of this is out of our control. At one point in her tirade, entitled mom pitches a fit about how all entitled kids' bedding and clothing needed to be washed to prevent the spread of bed bugs. Imagine her displeasure that the 2 washing machines on our floor are currently occupied. Entitled mom, why are people doing laundry at this hour? I need these machines. Me, well, people keep different schedules. I'm sure the person will come back for their clothes when the cycle is done. You're welcome to use the washers when they're empty. Timer showed that they would be maybe 15 minutes left. Entitled mom, no, these need to be washed immediately in hot water. Bugs are living in my baby's room. Me, I'm sorry ma'am, the machines on this floor are all full. We can try going to another floor's laundry room and seeing if they have open machines. It's not like it was a long trip either. At most, she had to walk 30 feet to the elevator, go up 1 floor, and walk another 30 feet to the next closest laundry room. Entitled mom, take their crap out. I don't care if the cycle isn't done. I need to wash these clothes now. She has a game tomorrow. Me, I can't just touch someone else's clothes like that, but I can see if I can find one who's doing laundry and ask them to take it out. In the meantime, I'll put an out of order sign on the door so you can have full access when the machines are empty, okay? Entitled mom, go find them and get their crap out of the washers. Do you know how much I pay in tuition? I should have exclusive access in this emergency, and I better not have to pay for laundry. Me, yep, I do. It's not a cheap school, but laundry is included in room and board, so it won't cost anything extra. Feel free to use whatever is available. Let me go find whose clothes are in the wash now. I reluctantly knocked on every door in my hall at 11 p.m. on a weeknight, sheepishly asking, hey, is anybody here doing laundry? A parent needs the machines ASAP. A lot of people didn't even bother opening the door. Those who did, quite crankily said, nobody's doing laundry, and closed the door in my face. I reported these findings back to entitled mom, who did not take this well. They have a game tomorrow. Doesn't anybody understand? I need these machines. Me, I'm sorry, but I cannot and will not remove someone else's wet clothes from the machines, and I can't allow you to do it either. But I checked the 3rd floor, and their laundry room is empty if you want to take everything up there. Entitled mom threw a look at grad assistant, likely expecting him to override my statement and pitch some poor kid stuff on the floor. Grad assistant, OP is right, ma'am. We can't do anything about the taken washers, but you can use any laundry room in the building. Every floor has at least 2 washers and dryers, and it's late, so most machines should be free. OP, can you get some of the extra detergent from the duty booth, please? I happily oblige, grateful to leave this awful woman's presence for 5 minutes. Entitled mom huffed out a fake-sounding thanks and ultimately accepted that we had done as much as we could. She was much more preoccupied hauling all her daughter's stuff out in industrial garbage bags. I gave her a couple Tide Pod samples as a consolation prize and retreated down the hall to my room. The next day, I ran into GA on campus, and he thanked me for handling everything so well and apologized for that woman being so crazy. I said, honestly, I'm not even mad. Those jerks got bed bugs, and I don't even have to move out of my room. Karma if I've ever seen it. We shared a laugh, the building got sprayed for bugs, and nobody wanted to party in a bedbug room for the rest of the semester. Speaking of bed bugs, have you or anyone you know ever had bed bugs? If so, how did you get rid of them? Please let us know. I would have emptied those washing machines myself. They had a game tomorrow. Am I the jerk for sharing pictures of my bathroom after my new neighbor urinated all over it? My wife and I wanted to welcome in our 2 new neighbors that had just moved in. For privacy, we will call them Blake and Jeff. We had an outdoor barbecue and had some drinks. Things were going well. We were all having a good time. Jeff and I are both into BMWs, so we had a lot in common. Blake asks if he can use the bathroom, and I said sure. He goes and comes back and everything's normal, and then 10 minutes later, they say they have to leave. I think about an hour later, I hear my wife scream. I go check the bathroom, and someone urinated everywhere. The seat was dirty, the drywall was dirty, our carpets were wet. I get people miss, but this was deliberate, and there was no attempt at all to clean this mess. The only person that went into that bathroom was Blake. Honestly, I don't know what happened, but the only time I could imagine that would upset them was when my wife said her brother was a cop and that he was scared of doing his job. But that's it. My wife talked to Sally and told them what happened with our neighbor. Sally didn't believe it, so my wife sent Sally the pictures and then it got shared by everyone in the neighborhood. Blake and Jeff didn't even deny it. Jeff messaged me that just because we had a conflict doesn't mean I need to go tell the entire neighborhood. They said that as a male couple, they face enough backlash and now don't feel welcome in this neighborhood because we needed to snitch. Like, what the heck? We had no problem with them. We wanted them to feel welcome, so we invited them over in the first place. And then they pee all over our bathroom. I don't even get it. Like, what the heck? We never had any beef or problem with them, and they do this. I'm just confused. When we tried to respond to their text, it shows never delivered, so it looks like they might have blocked us. I don't know. I don't see myself as a jerk for sharing with neighbors because how in any world is that okay behavior? Do you think it was okay for OP to share those pictures online? Or should he have kept it between them? Please let us know. I just want to see the pictures. Apparently, a rental dispute is grounds for life ruining. I was in college and had an off-campus house that I rented with some friends. The 2 previous years, I had found someone to sublet my place over the summer, which offset some of the costs of housing while I was working my summer job. In spring of 2010, I was looking to do the same thing. At the time, I was working at a store loosely affiliated with the university when I got a call from a parent who thought she was calling someone from the university. I explained the distinction, but said that I'd be happy to try to help her anyway. She told me she was looking for a place for her son to store a couple boxes over the summer. Now, we had a lot of students from all over the place, and storage companies knew it, so they would charge an arm and a leg for every little thing. I'm talking about like $250 a month to store 5 regular moving boxes. I told her that I had a house with a basement nobody was using, and her son could always keep his stuff in the basement for $150 for the summer. She liked the idea, and as we continued talking, we decided that he would take a look at the place and consider subletting it from me for the summer for $550 a month instead of the $1,200 a month that campus housing would charge. He liked it, so I drafted up a sublease agreement, just like I had done with 3 previous subletters. Got 1/2 month's rent, plus another $250 security deposit, and we had ourselves a deal. I told him in person and in writing that since he wanted to move in the day after my lease started on the place, not everything would be perfect. I'd need some time to get everything in, but he'd have, at the very least, a bed, desk, standing AC unit, and fan. It is worth noting that once summer started, I was A, working a terrible traveling salesperson job that had me working 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., and B, prepping to take the LSAT in mid-June. That said, I met him when he moved in and showed him the ropes. I rigged up the AC unit so that the condensation would drain out the window, so he didn't need to worry about it, and I gave him all the information he needed. 2 days later, I get a call from him at 10 a.m. saying that the AC was leaking. Okay, I told him, I'll be there after work. I get to the house at 9 p.m. only to find that he did literally nothing about the problem. The AC was still running and leaking into the room. The carpet was soaked, and a bunch of my furniture was pretty heavily water damaged. I figured out how to get most of the water out of the carpet, turned off the AC unit, and told him that I'd come back with a window unit when I had the time to get one. The next day, he tells me that he wants to move out because it's too hot and the room now smells. I'm frustrated that he wants to break his lease because he decided not to do anything to fix the problem that happened, but whatever. I went to the place to talk through the next steps, and here was our interaction. Me: I get that you want to leave, but we have a contract. What is your expectation about the money? Tenant: my mom says that since I was only here for a few days, you should refund the $475 I already paid you. Me: that isn't really realistic. You damaged my room and are breaking the lease. I can offer you $100. You can keep your stuff here. Just let me know when you want it, and I'll let you in to get it. Him: well, I can't really say if that's okay. My mom wrote the check. Me: I didn't sign the contract with your mom. I signed it with you. Your dad witnessed it. Him: but it's not my money. I don't know if this is okay. Me: like I said, my contract is with you. It doesn't matter who pays me. The payment is on your behalf. Him: okay, I'll see what she says. He took my check and gave back my key. I thought the matter was over. It wasn't. Within an hour, I got multiple calls from both of his parents. One was from his dad, who told me he was an attorney and would sue me for the $375 I stole from them. The other was from his mom, who told me that she was going to 1. Call the school and have me expelled. 2. Call future employers and have any job offers rescinded. 3. Sue me and make me pay back everything and more. 4. Have me arrested for theft. It sounded crazy, so I had some friends and family listen to the message. Specifically, I had 2 attorneys and a judge listen, and all of them laughed, telling me to just ignore it. So I did. Worth noting, all of this went down the day before I took the, not making excuses, but I got a 156 on that exam and basically gave up on the idea of going to law school as a result. I was not thrilled with the situation, but I thought they were just blowing off steam. Oh boy, were they not. 3 days later, I get a call and an email from the Office of the Vice Provost for Student Behavior. I was working, so once I heard this sternly worded message that I needed to call back, I was terrified. Was I really going to get expelled over this? I call, and I learned that apparently I had presented myself as an agent of the university. I didn't. Told my tenant that my house was sponsored by the university. I didn't, and it wasn't. Stole hundreds of dollars from the family. Nope. Was stealing the tenant's stuff. I thought I was just being a decent person by letting him store his stuff without charging extra. Oops. After explaining, the person on the other end clearly recognized that I was representing things accurately. She even told me that I was relatively reasonable for writing that check for $100, as I really didn't have to, given the damage that was done to my room. She also told me what she had told the tenant's mom. This was a dispute between a landlord and a tenant, and it had literally nothing to do with the university. The tenant apparently wanted to pick his stuff up, so I went back to the house that night and he took it. But it wasn't over. In September, I got another email, this time telling me to appear in person. Again, I got nervous as heck. Once I walked in, the person rolled her eyes and said that she just wanted to have me come in so she could tell this tenant's mom she talked to me so that the woman would stop calling. Apparently, she had called no fewer than a dozen times, but it still wasn't over. In December, my parents got a handwritten letter informing them of the tactics I was using to bully and intimidate the tenant and his parents. As with other letters, emails, phone calls, and miscellaneous threats, I ignored them. No lawsuit came. They lived across the country, and there's no way that a small claims court would have me reimburse $375 and pay $1,000 for round-trip airfare and hotels. I honestly would have been impressed if they decided to sue me on principle. The matter finally went away without the ruining of my life, my expulsion from school, rescinding of any job offers, or, well, any other consequences. But yowza, was that a bonanza of crap. Have you ever had an issue with your landlord? Or how about a tenant? Please let us know. Oh, I've had issues with just about everyone. Am I the jerk for snapping at my husband this morning because he made fun of my weight? Okay, some backstory. It's relevant. So, I have gained quite a bit of weight in the past 2 years, and unfortunately, I do weigh quite a bit more than I used to. I wish I could say that it's due to baby weight, but the truth is that I lost almost all of the baby weight, and the weight I did gain was due to a pretty heavy depression I was going through due to the fact that the past 2 years have been incredibly unkind to me. While I was at the end of my pregnancy in 2018, I lost my younger cousin. A month later, my father had a heart attack, and 3 days after he passed away, I found out that my husband had been cheating on me with the downstairs neighbor for the prior 2 years. I wish I could say that I'm making this up, but I'm not. Anyways, everything that went down took a huge toll on me mentally, and on top of that, I ended up in a job that I hated. So to cope, I ate more than normal and started drinking too. Nothing too excessive, but it certainly doesn't help. My husband does this thing where if I get new pants, he'll try them on to see if they fit. They do, and it's incredibly embarrassing. I've told him so, and that I don't like it when he tries on my clothes, but he'll still try on my pants and remark something along the lines of, "Wow, they actually fit. OMG, whoa." This morning, I had a bundle of new pants on the bed that I haven't worn because I need to get them hemmed, and my husband decided he wanted to try these ones on too. He was about to say something when I cut him off and basically ripped him a new one. I basically just yelled, "Why do you have to do this? Every time? Does it have to be every time? You're making fun of me," etc. And he was just like, "Dang, I just wanted to see if they would fit lengthwise, because if they do and you don't want them, maybe I can have one." Basically, my husband thinks I owe him an apology for having an attitude, and I don't feel like I do. How the heck am I supposed to know if it's just a general question when I'm just so used to it being a joke? So, am I the jerk? Edit. Thanks for all the replies and comforting words. I wrote the original post right before I started work and honestly didn't expect this to blow up so much. There are so many comments that it would be impossible to reply to all, and honestly, I needed to think of what to say, so I decided to add this edit. I hope I did this right, but here it goes. The reason why I asked this question in the first place is because I really needed to know if I'm the jerk or if I was just being too sensitive and should have apologized. It's been 2 years since I found out about my husband's infidelity. I was almost 8 months pregnant when I found out, so hormones and everything that happened when it happened, it was just so much unbelievably worse because of everything. Believe it or not though, he really is sorry. I know it seems like BS, but he really has done nothing but repent for the last 2 years and basically caters to my every need and want. He tells me I'm beautiful all the time. He even suggested for me to get a new beautiful diamond ring. I threw my old wedding band away when I found out about the betrayal, as a kind of the out with the old, in with the new thing. My issue is, he doesn't really seem to have common sense. I'm not saying that to be mean, it's just a fact, and I'm learning to accept it, but it isn't easy. For example, I can have 2 armfuls of groceries, and they could be on the verge of falling out of my arms, and he will not help unless I ask, because he genuinely needs me to ask the question, or else he thinks that I'm okay, and won't realize that no, it wasn't okay till the groceries are on the floor. I've often wondered if he has some mild form of Asperger's or ADHD or something, because he just doesn't seem to get how irritating and downright infuriating it is when he does stupid things like try on my clothes and make dumb comments. There are obviously still some major issues in our marriage, but we're trying to work through them. I'm still very angry, so yes, sometimes I snap at him when he's being insensitive, and I 100% realize that it's not necessarily super healthy to have that home life dynamic, especially with my son in earshot. But we are definitely working on it, and most of the time succeed in keeping our son out of the major arguments. I just take things day by day to see if everything will work out. So hopefully that helps clarify some things, maybe. Thanks for the kind words and for the helpful advice. I did let him know about the post and how it was super insensitive to ask for an apology when I honestly didn't know he wasn't just making fun, because he's done it before and he seems to be a little more understanding now and apologized because of how he was making me feel. So there's a win. Am I the jerk for not letting my in-laws see their grandson again? So when I was 20, I found out I was pregnant and was living with an unstable family member. So 3 months before I had my baby, I moved in with my partner and his family. The plan was to live there for a year to save, and when the baby was around 10 months old, get our own place. So my son was born in April, and my in-laws became very controlling and tried to act like his parents, such as they are renovating the house and said on top of our rent, we have to each do 4 full days of work while they take care of the baby. They wouldn't listen to any of our parenting decisions and kept having people over during lockdown to meet him when I wasn't even letting my parents meet him due to trying to keep him safe from getting sick. Now, about a week ago, my partner spent the day doing the renovations and they asked him to hose down the driveway when he was done. Fine, he did it for 3 hours and came in to spend time with our baby after working 6 days and doing work on the house with every spare minute after, so he had hardly seen our son in a week. Now his mom came in and said he didn't do a good enough job and had him keep going. He said no, he wanted to be with his son and it was dark. He'd finish tomorrow. His mom went crazy and kicked us out at 8 p.m. Said she'd call the cops if we didn't go, and we didn't get back the rent we paid 2 days before. Okay, we leave and have been living in a hotel while we look for a rental. Also, I live in Victoria, Australia, where we are in a hard lockdown and have around 500 new cases every day. The state is being very strict and things aren't going well here. She's now sending me messages saying to leave her son and come back to live with her with my baby, saying we don't have to pay rent anymore if I leave him, she'll take care of us, she misses her grandchild, etc. I'm so angry that she made my family, let alone my 3-month-old son, homeless during such a risky time, or at all to be honest, and she thinks we're living in the car, not a hotel. I'm angry she's trying to get me to leave her son, who I love and have a child with. I'm ready to block her and her husband and not let them be in our lives anymore. They threw us out, and even though my son is too young to know what's going on, he's been very unsettled being in a new place and not having any of his things. It's been hard on him and made us feel like bad parents. I don't think she deserves to be in our lives, but I do believe my son deserves to know his family and have grandparents. So, would I be the jerk if I took that away from him after what they have done to us? Edit. To answer a common question, yes, it was illegal for her to kick us out, but my partner works a job that pays cash, so our rent was paid in cash and we didn't have a signed agreement, meaning we can't prove we paid rent and therefore prove that it was illegal. Am I the jerk for buying my son a car but not my daughter? So I have 2 kids, a 20-year-old son and an 18-year-old daughter. My son is a football player at a Division I public school. My daughter just graduated. She will be going to the same school. It's in our state. I'm pretty well off and could have paid for my son's education, but everything is covered from football. I give him some extra spending money. I also bought him a brand new car, a Hyundai, and pay to insure it. Well, technically the car is mine because it's easier/cheaper that way, but I consider it his. My daughter won't be getting financial aid. She didn't play sports, and for anyone thinking otherwise, by law, there are as many athletic scholarships for men as women, so she had an equal opportunity as him. She didn't do well enough in school to get merit-based aid, and I make too much for her to get need-based aid, so I will be paying for her education. I will cover as much as my son's football scholarship does, everything education-related, room and board, and a small stipend for personal expenses, but I won't give her the extra money, nor will I buy her a car. My reasoning is because my son worked extremely hard in high school. Playing football with all the practices, lifting weights, etc. is a lot of work, and he worked harder than most of his peers. He also got good grades, and college football is basically an extremely physically exhausting full-time job, maybe more. There is barely enough time for actual school, but my son still manages to get good grades. No way does he have time to get a job and buy himself a car. My daughter, on the other hand, just basically coasted through high school, didn't spend much time on extracurriculars. She put just enough effort, almost none as she is very smart, required to automatically get into the state public universities. So I think that if my daughter wants a car and extra spending money, she can get a job. She could easily get a part-time job that would cover a car and still have much more free time than my son does. If she saves enough for a down payment, I would even buy the car on the condition that she pays me for it and the insurance monthly. My daughter thinks I'm being incredibly unfair, that I favor my son because he's a man and an athlete. I think that she's a spoiled brat, and it would actually be unfair to my son to buy her a car on top of everything else I'm doing for her. ETA, I've decided to give my daughter an opportunity to earn the car by getting good grades freshman year. If she gets, say, a 3.5, I will give her the car of her choice, of similar price to her brother's, pay to insure it, and give her extra spending money. Do you think OP is being unfair? And if so, why or why not? Please let us know. Jerk manager destroyed my childhood game store, so I got him fired. I judge card games from local to world championships. For several games, I was head judge at the world championships. The town I grew up in had a game store. It was ran by a husband and wife, and eventually their kids joined in on the fun. It was a lot of fun. Every night there would be no tables open, and for bigger tournaments, they would rent out vacant storefronts in the shopping center to fit everyone that would come. Eventually, they moved the store to a bigger store, and it would just keep growing. Some that grew up in the area and started playing at the store eventually had kids of their own, and they played in the store too. It became a tradition. This is the place that you took your kids to their first RPG game, or where you buy them their first booster packs. The only Friday nights that this store would be empty was if there was a big football game at the high school. The reason the store was so popular was because of the people. They were never flashy, and they treated everyone as if they were the best player in the world. They'd give away free snacks, sodas, booster packs for every little occasion, and sometimes just because. They were more than patient with players, helping them build decks and helping people get better at the games. They also knew and were able to teach every game they sold in the store. I can walk in any day, and there would be several RPG groups and rows after rows of people playing all sorts of games. Didn't matter if I bought anything or not. I can stay from open to close and not spend a dime, and they would still treat me like I dropped $1 million. It was Nerdvana. It was also the store where I judged my first event after I got my initial certification. And the husband had me as a judge for almost every event, and he would compensate me half a box of booster packs for the smaller events, up to 2 boxes for bigger ones. For one really big release weekend, he gave me 6 boxes of booster packs and paid me. His wife was equally amazing and loved her nerds, as she affectionately calls us, more than he did. She would bake cakes for birthdays. Every day for the week leading up to Christmas, there would be a tin of cookies always stocked and baked the night before. If people got in a jam and needed a last-minute sitter, they could leave the kids at the store, and she would warn the parents she'll watch them, but she'll also teach them collectible card games. I think this is also why the store made so much money. There was a rumor the store actually belonged to her. Life happened, and eventually I ended up living in a city about 3 hours away, and a few years ago, I heard the wife had passed, and the husband couldn't bear being in the store because everything reminded him of her, so someone else was running the store now. I planned on visiting the store, but being 3 hours away, I just couldn't make a casual trip there as a round trip would be 6 hours. Around the middle of last year, The store announced they were going to host a major qualifying tournament. This generated a lot of buzz. People from all over the region were making plans to travel to it. I thought this would be a great time to visit the store, so I made plans to go too. About 2 weeks before the event, I got an email from the publisher asking me to judge the event. I thought this was odd, as for store-level events, the store fields the judges and the publisher doesn't get involved at all. Also, while there are a number of us judges, we're not so numerous that we don't know each other. So I knew there was enough judges in the store's area that should be able to handle the event. I wrote back saying I was hoping to be able to play, but shouldn't there be judges in that area that would be able to do this? They wrote back with there should be, but the store owner said he couldn't get anyone, even with the list we sent him. Red flag. They ended the email with, "You should talk to the other judges from the area and see if you can get more of the story." I wrote back with, "Give me a few days to think about it." I immediately started contacting the judges in the area. They all told me the same story. The store was sold to a guy, and he was great. It was the manager that was the problem. He was a judge as well, but he thinks he knows better than everyone else. The manager would override obviously correct ruling because he was buddy with the person the judge ruled against. Apparently, this also happened at a major regional tournament. Now, one of the reasons I judge instead of play is judges are pretty well compensated, now anyways. Not just with booster boxes in our pay, but we also get some pretty sweet exclusive promos and swag. The jerk manager was hoarding judges' promos for himself. The judges found out about this after they went to a major event, and another judge was talking about a sweet swag he got. The area judges put 2 and 2 together and realized what was going on. After this happened, judges that lived in the area all agreed that they wouldn't judge under him ever again. This wasn't the worst of it. He would harass players, saying they can't bring any outside food or drinks. Tell them they have to buy products if they want to play in the store. He would harass the RPG players, telling them they have no life and they're just wasting valuable time. They could be playing better games. Needless to say, people tried to avoid him. But as the owner would sometimes run the store himself, no one can be sure when the manager from heck would be around. I was livid. This was the store I grew up in. This was the store I learned to play and mastered all my favorite games. And this jerk was killing the store. I started to formulate a plan. I wrote to the publisher and told them I'll do it. Also, what was the judge's swag for this event? They wrote back, really grateful as they would have had to have pulled the event if I didn't agree to it, and told me everything I would get for judging. They even told me they'll throw something in special for me helping them out. I wrote back asking for a specific item I knew that the jerk manager would definitely want and I could use to trap him. The publisher wrote back saying yes, they would include that in the tournament kit as well. The day of the event, I woke up at the ungodly hour of 5 a.m., got ready and left the house at 7 a.m. and made the 3-hour drive to my home store. I got there and there was already a line wrapping around the store. I said hi to people I knew from the store and those I met at larger events. It was like a mini homecoming. I walked in and the new owner, the manager, and 2 other judges were there and went over the day. The manager started saying that he's a level mid-tier judge and that he was the highest in the area right now, so he would be the head judge for the event, and what he says is final. I told him that I was a higher tier judge. On top of that, I had several advanced role qualifications. He said I was BSing him until I showed him my certification. He said he's still head judge because he was the manager of the store, and people in the store respect his authority. I had to stifle a laugh. Then I told him before I start, I would like my judge's swag. Now, normally, I get this at the end of the event because I don't want to carry it around all day. But given this guy's records, I wanted to give this guy as little chance as possible to steal what was owed to me. He started hemming and hawing and said he hasn't pulled the kit yet. I told him pull it, open it, and give me my swag or I will be walking away and I'd tell the publisher and this tournament will be invalidated. The owner tried to reason with me, but I was firm. I hated doing this to the owner. He hasn't done anything wrong. From what I heard, he was trying to continue the traditions and practices that the original owners had established. But I knew I needed to be a jerk to save the store's community from the manager. The manager finally came out and gave me my swag. I looked it over and I knew this wasn't everything that was promised to me. And I said as much. Then I pulled the email from the publisher that listed everything I was supposed to receive, including the special swag. The manager said he couldn't find it all, and the owner begged me to wait until the end of the event so he could make it right. I stood firm and demanded my stuff. I listed everything, and this time I also listed the special item I requested from the publisher. The manager went pale. The owner looked at the manager and said, "You said you got that when you judged that big event a few months ago." I pulled up the email where I requested the item and where the publisher said it would be included and showed it to the owner. The owner exploded. He demanded to see the entire packing list for the kit, and sure enough, my promised item was in there. Then I told the owner everything the other area judges told me, and the owner got redder and redder. Finally, I told the owner and the manager that unless I get the items I was promised by the publisher, I would call the police and report the theft, then walk out and make sure everyone outside knew what happened. The owner demanded the manager give me what was owed to me. He walked back and brought out everything that was listed in the email, plus the special item that was promised to me. The owner then fired the manager and apologized to me profusely for what had just happened and asked me to please judge. I agreed, started the tournament, and apparently it was the best ran tournament the store had since the change of ownership. No one walked away complaining, all the rulings were fair, and it even ended early. When I got home, I sent an email to the publisher with a tournament report as well as an explanation as to what happened. I also sent a long email apologizing to the owner for my crappy behavior. The owner wrote back saying he understood why I did it, and he was actually grateful as I was able to help him see the truth. The fallout. The jerk manager was stripped of his judge certification. Also, the guys he tried to help cheat were given bans from the game. The owner hired one of the area judges to manage the store, and it's slowly going back to what it was before the reign of the jerk manager. In the grand scheme of things, this wasn't some huge injustice that was righted, but this store is like family to me, and you don't mess with family. Parents demand I quit my gym membership because my older brother and dad aren't as fit as they used to be. Hey everybody, it's been a few weeks since I posted my first crazy family story, so now's a good time as any to share another one. Some backstory. My two brothers have always been naturally skinny and maintained an active lifestyle throughout most of their life. Me, 31 male, on the other hand, was born on the pudgier side and never really had an interest in sports other than swimming, but didn't get, nor want at the time, to work on that hobby. By the time I was in the Army, service is mandatory where I live, I was quite heavy at 246 pounds. While I was never teased about my weight, my family and especially my mother enjoyed poking fun at it, my eating habits and so on. Mom rolling her eyes whenever someone commented I've lost weight and so on. Since she was, and still is, quite the blob herself, I just ignored her or commented as such. But being stationed in a faraway base where combat units were also serving at, most of the guys in my base were quite fit. Me, on the other hand, wasn't assigned on a combative role due to a medical condition. No, it didn't have to do anything about weight, but a very minor birth defect that I was rid of by the time I was 12, but the Army is stupid like that, so they didn't want to take any chances to put me in harm's way. So instead of putting me in a combative role, they decided to have me on the oh-so-safe field of heavy-duty machinery. Genius. Anyways, again, most of the men serving in my unit were very fit and very muscular, and while I was never jealous of them, nor teased for being fat, one day I just took a good look in the mirror and was like, I can do better. And so I decided to start and change things. I'd watch very carefully what I ate, drank mostly water, joined the boys on their evening jogs, convinced my sergeant friend to get me an access to their gym, and to have him train me in Krav Maga a few times a week if he was able to. I kept on to what I was doing and was very strict at keeping at it until I've reached my target weight, and soon enough I had to pay a visit to the quartermasters and get a smaller sized uniform. After a year and a half of regular exercise, weightlifting, and a healthy diet, I lost a lot of weight, a few pounds shy of the target, and built quite a lot of muscle mass. In all honesty, it was my sergeant friend who convinced me to visit. Officially, it was exclusive to the combat unit, but in reality, it was available to everyone on base. Their gym, and encouraged me to lose weight. Man, am I glad I listened. While I was very proud of the progress I've made, my family, who have teased me about being fat for most of my life, weren't as happy as I was, but said nothing. The teasing had stopped, but there wasn't much beyond that, other than a semi-compliment like, "Did you take this shirt from one of your brothers?" whenever I wore something that actually fit me, or "Why are you still wearing this huge thing?" if I kept clothing from the time I was bigger. I still got comments during meals if I took an extra scoop, but whatever, I didn't care. I didn't lose weight to get compliments. Okay, maybe I did, but just a little bit. Moving on. By the time I turned 22, I was back in a civilian life as well as working myself through university and also a part-time job. Also, during that time, I had saved up enough to afford a membership at a gym close to campus. They were on the more pricey side, but that's due to the location being more high-end. While I was being the healthiest and most physically fit I've ever been in my entire life, my older brother wasn't faring as much. He had stopped jogging, his smoking got worse, and he was getting chubbier every day. He's still not obese by any chance, but he's not nearly as fit as he used to be, and he's only in his late 30s. It only got worse on family gatherings, especially weddings where a lot of distant relatives and those who don't get to meet often would also be present. Also, I'm a massive introvert, so fully packed events are not my thing, so I'd often avoid those and barely even met with my extended family during my service. So you can imagine some of my relatives' shock seeing me over 100 pounds lighter. Some didn't even recognize me. I guess my brother got some comments from people because he had no longer looked smug whenever he looked at me. About 8 months into my membership there, my mom set me down. I was still living at home, and the conversation went as follows. We've got me, we've got my mom, and we've got my older brother. Me, what's up? Is everything okay? Mom, everything is fine, honey, but I just wanted to talk to you about something. Me, okay? I already had a bad feeling. These conversations always seem to be about me doing something wrong. Mom, well, you know your father and I are very proud of how far you've come. You're looking very handsome. Me, thanks, Mom. A very rare compliment. Mom, but me and your dad are a little worried. With all the expenses we have, along with your tuition and not your gym membership, we're getting a little tight. Can you cancel your membership, please? We can no longer afford it. Me, thinking, okay, here we go. Mom, you guys don't pay for my gym membership. I do. And who gave you that money? It's money I've saved from birthdays, allowance from way back when, and work. Also, I'm on a scholarship, so you do know you guys aren't paying for school either, right? Mom, getting frustrated. Well, you can't go to your gym anymore. Me, and why is that? Because we, she and Dad, think your older brother should use it instead. He really wants to go to that gym, but he can't afford it. It really depresses him. Don't you think it's mean of you to keep going there while he can't? Me, Mom, be real. Older brother makes twice the money I make, so he can afford a gym membership on his own. That said, the gym isn't located anywhere near his apartment. Mom, that doesn't matter. We decided that you can't go anymore. It's not fair towards older brother. You're going to cancel your membership, and that's final. Me, no. Mom, well, I will be giving them a call, son, and cancel it for you. Impossible, unless she can imitate my voice and had my credit card. Stop being selfish and be more fair towards your brother. Me, right. Mom, why can't you just do this one thing for your brother? It's bad enough he quit jogging, now he's smoking, and you're not helping with what you're doing. Come on, OP, be more considerate. Also, think about your father. Me, Dad has a problem with me working out too? You know he can barely move with his bad back. Me, Mom, Dad can move just fine. Just yesterday, I helped him clear out the garage. He had his own gym membership, which he had to quit recently due to what's going on. Mom, you're not being fair, OP. Me, holding on to my last nerve. Mom, I'm not going to stop working out because some 30-plus-year-old man baby hates seeing me get healthier while he tries tucking in his beer gut. If my looser genes affect older brother so much, he can get up and do something about it. Funny how you've never said anything to either of my brothers to tone it down while I was fat. Mom, how dare you say that about your brother? At that point, I just got up and went on my business while she sulked and gave me the cold shoulder for the rest of the day. However, during mealtimes, she'd try to get me to eat a lot more or cook very fatty things, but only sugar-packed drinks, bring up fast food places whenever we went out eating, and then get mad at me whenever I said that McDonald's is not a restaurant. Whatever she tried to do didn't work, and I soon began buying my type of soft drinks myself, or just drinking more water if I drank anything that wasn't either sugar-free or diet. Now, even though my dad supported older brother, he didn't say much, and I have no idea why she even brought him up. Anyways, that's my tale. I've lived with them for 4 more years until I've saved up enough to move out in 2015. After that, some things have happened that led to me cutting all contact with the 3 of them. Stay safe out there. Would you stop going to the gym to make your family feel better? Please let us know. Speaking of the gym, I've got a spin class tonight. Am I the jerk for switching to regular milk to prove my lactose-intolerant roommate keeps stealing from me? Me and two other guys share an apartment together and we split all the bills. The only thing we don't split costs on is groceries. Everyone's in charge of buying their own food, and we don't touch whatever doesn't belong to us in the fridge. We put our names on everything so no one gets mixed up. This issue has been going on almost a year, and I'm sick of it. One of my roommates, R, keeps stealing my food. I get home from work and containers with my leftovers are sometimes missing. They have my names written on them, or my stuff finishes too quick. My gallon of milk, for example. I buy almond milk because I like the taste, but it seems to finish after a week, even though I've only drank once or twice. I confronted R about this lots of times, and that's caused a lot of arguments. He outright denies it and tells me I'm crazy, even though it's so obvious. My other roommate and I carpool together because we both work the same early morning shifts around the same area, so I know it's not him. It's always after we get back home and R's already left for work that I notice my food's gone. My roommates also had a similar problem, but not as often as I do. I'm guessing because R doesn't like what he buys. The funny thing is, R buys a lot for himself and is even more stingy about his food. He will literally point out what's his when he comes back from grocery shopping and tell us not to touch it. Last week, my milk was nearly empty again and I got fed up. I went to the store and bought some regular dairy milk. I drank what was left of my almond milk and refilled the gallon with the one I bought. This was to catch/prove R is the one stealing since he's lactose intolerant. The next day, Saturday, we get back from work and R is mad. He yelled at me that he was stuck in the bathroom for 40 minutes because of my milk. He was using it to make a shake. I only responded with, "So then, you're the one who's been stealing." He exploded. Yeah, he admitted he was sometimes drinking my milk and eating my food, but he was more mad that I switched milks than the fact that he was caught. I told him I wouldn't have done it if he had just stopped taking my stuff from the fridge, or at least told the truth instead of trying to make it seem like I was making it up. My roommate backed me up and thought it was kind of funny. He got payback for stealing from us. It's a little tense right now, and my roommate told me R is trying to convince him to agree to kick me out. Little does he know, we're both looking to move somewhere else together because we're sick of his crap. I told some buddies what happened, and a few think I was a jerk for that. I feel like I'm not in the wrong here. He was taking my food and not even owning up to it, and I wanted to prove it. Does that make me the jerk? What do you think? Did OP take it too far, or did his roommate get exactly what he deserves? Please let us know. I dare you to mess with my milk. You don't want to switch seats? Okay. My boyfriend and I went on the same flight, but we had mistakenly booked his seat right in front of me. A nice flight attendant noticed that we were together, and she told us that the plane shouldn't be full, so she'd inform us if 2 adjacent seats would become available. It was a small plane and had 2 seats on each side of the aisle. While my boyfriend was loading our baggage in the overhead bin, a woman sat on the window seat of his row. I thought it might be a good chance to sit together. I mustered up all the courage I had in me and started to talk to her. "Hello, ma'am. Will it be all right if you switch seats with—" "No, I don't want to switch seats. I want my window seat," she said haughtily and proceeded to stare out the window. This discouraged me because I'm wary of confrontations. I decided to shut up. However, the flight attendant from before was behind us and made way to the woman. "Good morning, ma'am. This lady was asking—" "I don't want to switch seats. I booked a seat and I want my reserved seat." She angrily announced this without even looking away from the window. The attendant, still cheerful, said, "Of course, ma'am. You have the right to your reserved seat. May I please see your boarding pass?" The woman crisply presented her boarding pass. "Okay, ma'am. You may proceed to 19C, which is this seat," the flight attendant explained, pointing to the aisle seat. The woman was stunned, her mouth moving inaudibly. She even looked frantically around for the seat number, then at her pass. But as expected, the flight attendant was right. After a few seconds, she hastily and violently, there was a lot of unnecessary sounds of hitting stuff, moved to 19C. My boyfriend sat beside her, on the window seat of course. She spent the next boarding minutes just bowing her embarrassed head down at her phone. The flight attendant gave me a devilishly knowing smile, and I whispered, "Thank you." When all the passengers had boarded, she made to an aisle seat way ahead of us. There were actually 3 window seats near us, but I guess she was too ashamed to take them. My boyfriend moved to the seat beside me. If she just pressed pause on her arrogant attitude and tried to listen to me or the flight attendant, she would be sitting in my window seat. Notes: this does not seem to be clear. The angry lady was initially sitting on my boyfriend's assigned seat. I would not ask her to switch if it was her seat. I simply don't have the audacity. I did try to ask because it was supposed to be a win-win situation. She'd get to have the window seat she wanted but didn't have, and my companion and I could seat together. The first time she refused, we were to let it go. My boyfriend would just allow her to stay. The flight attendant did the talking for us. Whenever you fly, do you like the window seat or the aisle seat? Please let us know. I always get my window seat. The bathrooms have to be along the back wall. I work in the back room/receiving area of a large store whose building is older than I am. Anyway, there's a gate that normally goes across this back area, blocking it off from the rest of the store with a sign on it saying, "Employees only beyond this point." This is a nice thing to have as it allows me to do my work without being bothered by customers with questions, since I don't know much about our stock other than how much of it we have or when the next shipment is due. But unfortunately, most of my fellow employees don't understand it and constantly leave it open when they come through, usually to just throw away trash. I'm pretty tired of having to shut it at least 5 times an hour and sometimes just let it stay open. Today, an older gentleman comes into the back while I'm working and just stands there, huffing to himself. Normally, I try to help out lost customers the best I can, but this guy just marched himself back there into an area that is clearly different from the rest of the store and stood there, wrists on his hips and a jerky look in his eyes. So I pretend like I didn't see him and got back to work. Just my luck, he doesn't take the cue and walks right up to me and huffs in the most perturbed voice I have heard from a customer thus far. "Hey, where are your bathrooms?" I, already having a bad day as we're slammed with freight and the night crew left half of their work laying around in my area, look at him and answer, "Other side of the store, sir." "I just came from there." He huffs louder at me, "And they're most certainly not there." Me, still not caring enough to deal with him. "I'm sorry, sir, but I know they are. They are between electronics and the outside retail doors." Crosses arms and narrows his eyes at me. "I didn't see them. I went up and down the back wall, and it's not there." I sigh as I realize what's going on. I have to answer this same question daily. The bathrooms aren't along the back wall, it's on the side wall, but still on the other side of the store. He then goes into a mini tirade about how there should have been a sign. There are only 3, and they're bigger than me, and how all bathrooms should be along the back wall. Me, now getting upset. "Sir, it's not on the back wall and can't be on the back wall." "Why not?" "Because neither I nor you were here when the building plans were drawn up. Now, if you want the restrooms, they're on the other side of the building." He starts huffing and trying to say something further, but I cut him off. "Sir, if you want, I can show you to the bathroom." He scowls at me, but agrees. I walk him towards the rest of the store and point above the racking at the ceiling on the other side of the building. "Can you see the bathroom sign, sir?" "Yes, finally." He huffs once more. "Good," I say as he gets to the other side of where the gate goes, and I slam it closed. "You can handle the rest from here." I can't say what his face was like after that, as I turned on my heels and returned to work. But I do know he stood there for a hot second before stomping off towards the bathrooms. Am I the jerk for calling out my sister after she shamed me online? I'm 28. My sister is 26. She got married 3 years ago and has 1 kid already. I live out of state, and she's in our hometown and lives close to our parents. Last week, my sister had her 2nd pregnancy announcement at a birthday dinner for our dad. I couldn't attend. Everyone was of course excited and sent congrats. This past Friday, my long-term boyfriend and I went hiking on our favorite trail and had a picnic. We walked back to his car and he asked me to get something from the trunk. When I opened it, there was a sign that said, "Turn around," and pictures of us from when we started dating. When I turned around, he was kneeling with a ring. This proposal is cheesy and romantic, and I melted. This was also the anniversary of our first date apparently, which I didn't even remember. I posted pictures of the ring and the proposal story and called my parents and friends. The ring was a refurb of his grandmother's with the same stones and shape, but a more modern design. I found out yesterday, and by that I mean I was sent screenshots by an old friend in my hometown, that my sister had been shaming my proposal and me online. She was saying I had purposefully had my engagement right after her pregnancy announcement, and that I was also clearly jealous my little sister had gotten married first. She also made fun of my rustic proposal, saying money can't buy class. My fiance and I both have good jobs, so she thinks we're rich snobs, and made fun of my gaudy ring. I ended up confronting my sister and said she was being petty, and I didn't like her mocking me online. She got uppity and defensive, of course, and tried denying it. I told her I felt bad for her children since their mother was such an immature bully. She's been accusing me of saying she's a bad mom, and my mom thinks I shouldn't have stooped to her level. Am I the jerk? Edit. Wow, this response is overwhelming. I appreciate all the well wishes. Firstly, I want to say there's nothing wrong with staying in your hometown or being a wife and mother. Please don't act like this is some sort of awful fate. Don't shame her for having her kids young. Everyone has a different definition of a happy life. Secondly, I appreciate the interest in my proposal/ring photos, but I made a new account to stay anonymous, and I'm generally a private person. It would be very hypocritical of me to have identifying info in a post ranting about my family drama. Third, yes, my boyfriend, fiance, is wonderful. We've been together 7 years, and he never ceases to impress me. Fine then, just quit. Okay. So when I was freshly out of high school, I hadn't decided on what I wanted to do with my life. So I got a job at a pizza place near where I lived. I've always been the type of person who would rather work than sit at home, and I didn't/don't have a ton of friends to hang out with. They started out having me just making the food deliveries once or twice a week, but that quickly turned into them calling me in daily about an hour after they opened because the managers/owners didn't want to make the deliveries, and they were the only ones working front of house. Like I mentioned previously, I didn't mind coming into work and would always say that it wasn't a problem. About 2 weeks into me working at the pizza shop, the owners insisted that I learn register because they were no longer willing to do it themselves during the week. Okay, sure, no problem. It's just more money for me. They continued training me in every aspect of running the physical business over the next month. Every once in a while, the owners would say they want to make me a manager so they can leave whenever they want. Great, I thought. As time went on, I would work anywhere between 60 to 80 hours per week because other employees would call out or not show, and the owners didn't want to stick around to deal with it. They even trusted me to hire a server and a delivery driver/cashier. About 8 months into working there, running myself ragged for them and never getting so much as a thank you for everything I did for them, I decided to sit down with one of the owners and express the way I felt to them. Me, hey, boss one, I know you keep saying you want to make me a manager. Is there any reason you haven't yet? Boss one, just haven't found the time or reason to train you for it yet. Me, what do you mean? I already know how to do everything from taking orders to ordering supplies when we're running low on something. Boss one, yes, but it's not your place to do all those things yet. Me, what do you mean? Boss one, you're not a manager. You should not be doing manager tasks. All right, that's how you want to play it? Then consider it done. For the next 2 weeks, I didn't do anything aside from what they hired me to do, make deliveries, and only on my scheduled days. This went on for about 2 days and really upset the owners because now at least one of them had to be there at all times to make sure everything else was getting done. Eventually, Boss 1 called me back into his office to talk. Boss 1, cranky, what has gotten into you? Me, what do you mean? Boss 1, you know you need to put in orders for supplies, yet we're running out of flour and soda syrup and no orders have been made. Me, I'm sorry, Boss 1, but you told me that I'm not a manager and I shouldn't be acting like one, so I stopped. Stop being a child, cranky. You know your responsibilities here and you need to do your job. Me, I am doing my job, and my only job. If you want to make me a manager, I'll be happy to do those things. Boss 1, you really think I'm going to make you a manager after this? Me, if I'm not a manager, then I won't do a manager's job. Fine then, just quit. You need to get over yourself. Me, okay, I quit. As of right now, I'm done. Boss 1, fine. So I left. I was scheduled to work all week, which meant that they were out of basically a manager. I ended up getting a call the following afternoon from Boss 1 demanding to know why I was so late for work, but I just reminded him that I no longer worked there. Now, I was and still am very close friends with some old coworkers and heard all of the drama as it unfolded. Turns out, most of the employees ended up refusing to work because the owners had to be there full-time now and they were awful. In my time working there, I hired about 5 people and all 5 left because I wasn't there to play manager anymore. They ended up closing about 6 months after I left because they couldn't get anyone to stay longer than about 2 weeks. Speaking of pizza, what's your favorite pizza place to get food from? Please let us know.
Little Caesars all day, every day, bruh.
Am I the jerk for keeping my dress, even though my sister got married wearing it? Between work and family commitments, my boyfriend and I attend a lot of events which require dressing up. I have this one dress that I really like and I'm able to wear to basically anything, which is this blue off-the-shoulder dress. It's nothing special, but it fits me really well, and it's right on the line between formal and casual, which basically means I can wear it to anything, and it's super comfy. So therefore, it has become my go-to dress for most occasions. My boyfriend bought it for me, and it's not particularly sentimental or expensive. Checked with my boyfriend and it was only 140 pounds and on sale, which isn't petty change to anyone in this scenario, but my sister doesn't know the cost and I thought it was like 50 pounds or something, but it's just a really lovely dress. My sister asked to borrow the dress a little over a week ago. She said that she and her fiance were going to a wedding and she needed something to wear. I've let her borrow dresses before and I've always gotten them back, so I didn't see the harm in lending it to her. She said she'd have it back ASAP. Later that day, my parents and I get a video chat request from my sister. She's getting married. Her fiance's brother is holding the phone. I still don't have all the details, but it sounds like it was meant to be someone else's wedding. They called it off, and my sister and her fiance decided to use the wedding. My sister keeps talking about paperwork, so I don't think they signed a certificate, but they had a ceremony. After the ceremony, my parents invited everyone over the next day for a reception. My sister and her husband are currently living with our parents. On arrival, Mom handed me the dress in case she forgot later. I put it in the car and the night continued without mention of it. The next day, I wake up to about a dozen missed calls and even more texts from my sister asking if Mom gave me my dress, by which I mean my sister was saying my dress like it was hers. I say that yes, Mom gave me my dress back. Sister loses her crap. Says Mom didn't check with her first. It's her wedding dress and she wanted to keep it. I say she didn't ask. She says that she just assumed. I say it's my dress. My sister says that it's not fair as she didn't get the big white dress she's dreamed of and I shouldn't have assumed I'd be getting it back after she got married in it. Then she asks me to give it to her as a wedding gift. I say no. She says it's not that expensive. I have loads of dresses, 4 or 5 for formal occasions and a few sundresses, while she only has one plain black dress. I won't miss this one, but I say it's my dress and I really like it, so I want to keep it. My mom, sister, and brother-in-law all feel that as the dress now holds sentimental value to my sister, I should give her the dress. And when I said that I wanted to keep it, they got mad at me and said that I'm being unreasonable and basically being a total jerk. Dad and my boyfriend are mostly on my side, but even then, they're not 100% sure. Am I the jerk for wanting to keep it? Just to clarify, it sounds like they were attending someone else's wedding, one of the husband's relatives. Then the bride and groom backed out, and my sister and her now husband decided to not let the wedding go to waste and got married instead of them. I don't know the specifics or how they went from guests to bride and groom, but I'm fairly confident my sister didn't intend to get married in my dress. I'm searching for the same dress because getting a copy of it is probably the best solution here. But we bought it a few years ago now from a department store that stocks several brands. I cut the tags off so I can't trace it to the right brand, and it's not on the department store website at all, presumably because it's about 3 years old. Update: I've slept on it, and despite the responses, my sister is the type to not let these things go. And at the end of the day, I value my relationship with my sister more than my relationship with my dress. So I'm just going to give her the dress. I have a few I can wear to events, and it's not the only one my boyfriend has bought me, to be honest. And thanks to that person finding the brand, I might even treat myself to something similar. Dad has offered to pitch in for a replacement as a thank you, but I don't know if I'll take him up on it. My sister has apologized for assuming, which might not sound like much, but by her standards, that's basically the equivalent of her voluntarily writing a 10-page essay on the importance of not getting married in someone else's dress. Update: someone found the exact dress. It's no longer being sold, which is a shame, but honestly, I can't imagine ever wearing this dress again now. I know tainted sounds really dramatic, but I can't imagine wearing it without being aware that my sister got married in it. It wasn't such a big deal to me when I first said she couldn't have it, but after thinking about it, I can't imagine wearing my sister's wedding dress to events. Edit: can people please stop calling me a spineless/doormat/pushover? I have plenty of dresses, all bought by my boyfriend, all with varying levels of sentimentality. This particular dress is probably the least sentimental. It just happens to be the most versatile, which is why I was attached to it. But my little sister just got married in it. The time my sister wore it while getting married is way more sentimental than the time I wore it while attending my boyfriend's boss's retirement party or my cousin's wedding. My sister apologized sincerely for her actions. Besides, she's 21. She's a self-absorbed idiot who I can't stand most of the time, but she's also one of my favorite people in the world who at 18 tried to square her 5'2" skeleton looking self up at my 6'4" gym maniac boyfriend and said if he ever made me cry, he'd live to regret it because that's the kind of sister she is. She's not a narcissist, she's just a bit of a jerk sometimes, and I am too, so I'm hardly in a position to judge, let alone cut contact with her as some of you have suggested. Kindly chill. Well, what do you think? Should she give the dress to her little sister or keep it for herself? Please let us know. Entitled Parents, the neighbors from heck. This happened many years ago in my old house. My now ex-husband and I had just moved into a nice house with our dog Cooper. He was a super friendly Cocker Spaniel who was great with kids. Our neighbors, entitled parents, had two girls who loved to play with our dog when he was out front with us and through the fence if he was outside. It was a bit annoying since they would distract him from doing his business, so we would always look outside to see if they were outside before actually letting him out. And somehow they would always run out and yell, "Cooper!" It was really annoying, but no big deal. Things weren't so bad until one day we were working on the yard and had the garage door open. We left Cooper inside so we could actually get some work done. The girls came over and asked to play with Cooper. We said not right now. He's inside while we work because we can't watch him. The girls said fine and left. When we were done, we went inside to eat lunch. I was taking a shower and getting dressed because I was going to meet up and go shopping with my mom. Apparently, the girls saw we were outside and the garage door was open, so they just came inside, uninvited, to play with our dog. My husband was incredibly uncomfortable because these are two girls he doesn't know in our home, and he's alone there. When I came out of the shower, I was like, "What are you two doing here?" They said, "Our mom said we could come inside to play with your dog." I said, "No, you need to go home. It's not okay for you to come inside our house by yourselves." I walked them to their house and spoke with their mom. I told her it was inappropriate for her to send them to come into our home uninvited to play with our dog. They don't know us, and that is very dangerous. The entitled mom said, "What? They just want to play with your dog, and I was busy, so I told them they could go." I again explained how they don't know us, and it's not okay to send your kids into a home of someone you don't know. She said, "Well then, take your dog outside so they can play with him. It's not that hard." I honestly couldn't believe the things coming out of her mouth. I just kind of scoffed and said, "Please do not send them to my house. They aren't welcome." The mom started saying something about us being rude and hating them, and I don't know what else because I walked off. I thought this would be the end of it. It wasn't. A couple weeks go by. They constantly asked us to bring Cooper out, even as we were leaving our house. We always said no and even stopped bringing Cooper to the front yard to get away from them. It was an absolute nightmare. Always checking outside before doing anything to make sure they weren't there so we didn't have to deal with them. Then one day, I was home alone with Coop and these girls came and rang our doorbell. I was in the kitchen and I ignored them. I figured they would go away once they realized no one was home. Nope, I was stuck in the kitchen while they rang the doorbell over and over. They did this because it would rile Cooper up and they could play with him that way. Our door was a large glass door with iron design. They banged on the glass so much, I was afraid they would break it. But I didn't want to go and tell them because I just didn't want to deal with them. They decided to leave, and when I looked, I saw they had removed every rose from our gorgeous rose bush. Every single one of them. I was fuming. When my husband got home, we decided we both needed to go and speak to both parents. I told her what had happened. She got mad at me because I was home and didn't let them in. She said they wouldn't have done any of that if I had just opened the door. I asked her why the girls came over to begin with, since I had previously told her they weren't welcome. She then tells me, "Well, I thought you weren't home, so I sent them over to play with your dog through the door, like they always do. I needed to nap, and they were being so loud, I needed them gone for a bit." We just looked shocked at the words coming out of her mouth. Her husband was equally as shocked. He had no idea she was doing this. My ex-husband was a police officer and told her if it didn't stop, he was going to file a restraining order against the entire family. The father assured us it would be the last time and apologized over and over. The entitled mother saw nothing wrong with sending her kids to our house while we weren't home, and even so while we were home. She thought we were being absolutely ridiculous. Either way, the girl stopped coming over. Things were finally going well in our new home and we were happy. Then, one day, my niece stayed at our house. While we were getting out of the car, the entitled mom saw her and started yelling at us, saying it wasn't fair that she could play with Cooper, but not her girls. I told her this was my niece and she was actually invited, as I quickly escorted my niece into the house. I could hear the yelling continue, but turned the TV on loud to drown her out. The next thing I know, her two kids are at our front door banging and yelling. I put Cooper in the kennel, opened the glass part of the door, and told them to go home. They started crying and the dad came out, apologized, and left. Before we could even get a restraining order, we saw they put a for sale sign in their front yard. They moved out, and we never saw them again. To this day, anytime I read stories about entitled moms, I always think of this lady. I still can't believe it happened. I was so happy when they moved. The family who moved in had a son and a dog, and occasionally we would have puppy play dates in the front yard, but we never had issues with the kid coming over. Thank God. Karen demands I remember her password for her. My parents own a small business. We are a pack and ship store that also sells stuff for some local artists. We also do some other services such as faxing, fingerprinting, printing/copying, shredding, and notaries. My siblings, some friends, and I work at the store. I was at work about 2 weeks ago, and we were very busy during lunchtime, which is pretty normal for us. My brother, mom, and I were all there, and both my brother and my mom were handling their own things, and I was disinfecting the counter. This lady with the classic Karen haircut walks in. She looked like Dolores Umbridge if Umbridge had a Karen haircut. I finished disinfecting, put the rag back into the bucket of disinfectant, then walked to the register to help her. She was pleasant at first. She told me she needed to print and sign 2 large documents, then scan them in and email them to the company they were for and herself. Normal stuff for our business. So she emailed the documents to us. Sometimes Verizon phones struggle to connect to data within our store, and our network is secure because of safety and privacy for our customers. She had a Verizon phone and was instantly frustrated with how long it took for it to send. Around this time, her daughter came in, apparently in a rush. Her daughter barely spoke while she was here, but Karen had mentioned something along the lines of needing to go to work soon. I'll call her daughter CS, college student. She seemed much nicer than her mother. So I finally got the emailed documents. They were PDF files that required a password. So I disinfected the keyboard and gave it to Karen to log into the PDFs so we could print them. She typed her password in and hit enter. Wrong password. So she typed it in again. Wrong password. I lost count of how many times she tried to type in the same password and kept getting the wrong password. By now, all other customers in the store have come and gone. Another batch has come and gone. Finally, I sheepishly asked if there was a different one she could have used. That's when she started to get nasty.
I know my password. It's the name of my daughter.
I exchanged a look with my brother, then quietly said, "Okay, ma'am. Try different combinations then." She tried the password a few more times while I just waited awkwardly. Her daughter was wandering around the store, looking at the things we have for sale. I was watching her as I waited. Then Karen cleared her throat, so I looked at her.
Why are you just standing there like an idiot?
Her daughter glared at her from across the store. I was a bit dumbfounded and frankly exhausted, so it took me a moment to actually register what she said. I just quietly apologized and stared at the counter. She kept grumbling about how I'm so unhelpful and I should be helping more. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I suggested again to try a different combination. She did that snarly sigh thing that grouchy teenagers such as myself do. She typed in something else, and suddenly we had access to the documents. She grumbled something along the lines of, "Finally," then called her daughter over. I tried to print it and it came up with an error code, so I called my mom over and she helped me riddle it out. But then it printed absolutely tiny, so my mom and I spent a few minutes finagling with the settings. That's when I noticed that it was set to the receipt printer size, so I set it to letter size and printed it again. Perfection. Karen's face lit up and she said, "You're so smart. Thank you." Oh, the irony. The rest of the job was pretty routine. I told my brother what happened afterwards and he gave me a hug. 3 minutes later, I hear my mom's voice raise. She said, "What?" But that was the last we were expecting to hear from that lady, so there wasn't anything we could do. Work went back on like normal. But wait, there's more. We got a call about 40 minutes after her daughter and Karen had left. My mom picked it up because my brother and I were handling customers. It was Karen's husband. He said they never got the email and that Karen wanted to send it to his email as well now. So we sent the documents to them again and all was fine. Then the husband stopped before he hung up and asked, "Did my wife cause any troubles while she was there? She keeps saying the customer service there was awful and I don't believe her." Not his exact words, but roughly what he had said according to my mom. My mom told him what had happened. He thanked her and hung up. I'd like to believe that Karen got chewed out, but who knows. Edit. I'm at work again today, and her daughter came into the store. Recognized her by her last name before the face, but it was definitely her, and she quietly apologized for her mother. It's weird that as soon as I decide to post this here, I see her again. Life is wild. What do you think the best password would be for a Karen? Please let us know.
I normally just use manager123.
Am I the jerk for being upset with my $150 engagement ring? My fiancé is quite well off, and while I don't make as much as him, I certainly would not be struggling on my own. He rotates between a few very expensive watches that he wears to work, and while we have a good grasp on financial literacy, we aren't shy about spending for the important parts of life. We openly share finances, so I know he isn't secretly in debt or any such nonsense. The ring is nice and understated, but more of a nice stacker than an engagement ring to show off. The stone, which I'm doubtful of being a diamond, is quite small. It is not heirloom. When friends or family get engaged, there's always the excitement in sharing the news, and inevitably someone will ask to see the ring, and then everyone coos over it, and it's a good time. When I showed mine, the mood got awkward and they feigned excitement just long enough until it was okay to change the topic. This is not a knock on them, they are just terrible liars. I would like to make clear that I am not expecting a 3-month salary ring or an over-the-top wedding. However, this is a piece I will be wearing daily for decades and is largely considered a symbol of his love. I know not all feel this way, but we do, or at least I thought we did. But I really don't think I'm out of line for thinking of it as a long-term investment piece, given the amount of wear it will see and the sentimentality behind it. Surely it is worth more than a gaming console. Am I the jerk here? Edit. I'm getting a lot of the same questions, so I thought I would put the answers here. We had briefly talked about overall style, and he has access to my jewelry box to know the stuff I typically wear. As the price of the ring wasn't very important to me, the budget for it was never really discussed, which I see as a mistake now, but I didn't realize that this could be a problem. Price is not important so much as I don't care if he spent $1,000 or $100,000 on it. But this ring looks cheap. It is not quality craftsmanship. The dampened excitement of showing off my ring was only a part of my post. The rest being that his drastic lowball on a piece I will be wearing every day for the rest of my life doesn't seem like the symbol of love one traditionally associates with engagement and wedding pieces. It's about having a very wealthy fiancé that invests more into the latest gaming console than he does in a lifelong symbol of our love. To you, a ring might be just a ring, but unless otherwise discussed, it would be silly to assume it to be a throwaway item. In my culture as well, the engagement ring is paired with the wedding band, not replaced. We share our finances, and I saw the charge on the bank statement. If he paid in cash as well, then he overpaid. Given that he has bought me more expensive jewelry in the past and sees what I wear on a regular basis, for him to lowball an important item this much seems pretty far out of left field and not something I would have thought I would have needed to clarify with him even if we had a longer conversation about it. Obviously, in hindsight, I should have. I think I'm more hurt with what it says to give your fiancé such a low-priced ring when money clearly isn't the issue than the fact that the ring itself was low budget. If we were worse off and $150 took effort to save for, I would be over the moon at what he got me and shoving it in everyone's face. However, this is not remotely the case. He has gifted diamond studs and other fine jewelry before and will splurge a bit more if it's something for the both of us. For example, a surprise getaway weekend for a holiday. He doesn't throw his money around needlessly, but he isn't stingy. To be blunt, it's a cheap ring, in look and cost. I also take exception to the people here acting like being unhappy with the ring means I'm unhappy with the engagement. Nowhere have I ever said this to be the case. Life isn't an all or nothing game. I can be unhappy with the ring while still being madly in love with my fiancé and thrilled to spend our lives together. We will be talking about this for sure, but I know this can be a touchy subject and wanted an objective eye on it first. I will update this post after that conversation. Update. He came home and we were settling down, and around dinner I started the conversation with, "Honey, I'd like to talk about the ring." And before I could finish, he just blew up. Started yelling, "Finally!" and how I had ruined everything by waiting so long. To be brief, he bought a crappy ring from a jeweler who got bad reviews so that when I got upset over it, he could just dump me under the guise that I was a gold digger. He had apparently been having an affair with a younger model that he's earned, but knew that breaking things off when everyone loved me so much would hurt his optics, so he had to make it my fault. He knew that leaving this pariahship would gain him sympathy, and there was a lot of rhetoric that clearly wasn't his own words, but something he was parroting from what I highly suspect is a much too influential work friend that I've had disagreements with in the past. Changes I had attributed to work stress are glaringly obvious to me now as symptoms of something more malicious under the surface, and I feel really ashamed I didn't see things more clearly earlier or wasn't somehow able to head things off before they got this far. I won't be sticking around to dig any deeper, but I know my now ex-fiancé would not have done and said the things he did without being pushed from bad influences behind the scenes. This doesn't mean I forgive him. I think he is incredibly weak and feeble-minded for letting this happen to us, but I also doubt I will be contacting many of our mutual friends as the dust settles. I left in the middle of his tirade around the 15-minute mark and am staying at my mother's. I haven't cried yet, and I think I'm still waiting for it all to suddenly make sense, but I know logically it might not ever. Thank you to everyone who responded to my post and offered your thoughts. I don't think anyone could have predicted what was going to happen from the information I gave, and now I'm off until the waterworks decide to flow, and I can have a good cry over it all. On the plus side, if there is one, is that I don't have to wear the stupid hideous ring anymore. What would you do if you were in this situation? Would you talk to them about the ring or just leave it as is? Please let us know.
Kevin had to take out a second mortgage to pay for my wedding ring. I deserved it.
If you don't clean the kitty litter every day, I will move and you will have to as well. I make the choice. So I just moved apartments because my previous landlady / roommate / leaser was absolutely crazy and broke a ton of laws. I would have escalated this situation and most likely gotten my landlady, who was over 40 years old, in trouble. But I'm pretty young, 21, so I decided to go the malicious compliance route. Where to begin? From the moment I moved into the apartment, things were going awry. The landlady hadn't moved her stuff out of my unit yet, so I had to help her do that before moving my stuff in. Of course, she didn't help me move my stuff in, just wanted help moving her stuff. Now, I'm a pretty laid-back person, arguably to the point of me being a borderline doormat, so whatever, cool. I'll help you move your stuff. Then after helping her, she decided to then tell me, after I've moved in and after the lease is signed, that my cat might not be able to stay because of her daughter's alleged allergy that she apparently didn't know about when she agreed to allow my cat in the unit. The landlady had 3 very aggressive and loud chihuahuas, as well as constantly babysitting her 9-month-old grandson who stomped and screamed the entirety of his visits. Once again, it's your girl, the doormat, and I just kind of ignored the annoyance I had towards the loud dogs and kid because I'm renting, so like, what did I expect? I notified her that if the cat hair became a problem, then I would temporarily house him until I could find a pet-friendly new place. Landlady agreed that this was the best route. Upon later conversations with her daughter, the allergy was super low grade and her daughter routinely pet and loved my cat without issue when she came down to do laundry, so I don't know why her mother made a huge deal of it. So now that I've painted a picture of my move-in, let me just add that I had 3 deal breakers. 1. Unit had to be pet-friendly. 2. Unit had to have separate entrance. And 3. If shared laundry, the washer and dryer were to be separated from my unit. It's totally my fault for choosing this place as the entrance was shared and my unit had no lock and I couldn't install one. The washer and dryer was in my unit, which meant if the landlady or her daughter wanted to do laundry, they would have to walk through my entire apartment. And now with the daughter's new allergy, things were looking grim. But whatever, I chose this as a favor to my landlady because she couldn't find anyone else. Big red flag retrospectively. And I worked with her, so I figured it would be okay since we could carpool. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. Shortly after my turbulent move-in day, things were tense as my landlady lost her father the previous year, and this was her first holiday season without him. I suppose that during my holiday to my parents, my landlady entered my unit without permission. She wrote a laundry schedule, so I knew she was supposed to be down there. This was not one of those times, and took a disliking to my cat's litter box. Now, I have one adult male tabby cat that maybe uses the litter box once a day, so I would clean the litter box 2 to 3 times a week, which had never been an issue before. Upon my return home, my landlady screamed at me in her car about my lack of hygiene for my animal and accused me of neglecting him while also claiming her son said he smelled a dirty litter in her unit when he was over for Christmas. She demanded that I clean the litter box every day / every other day, which I was basically doing already as it was cleaned every 2 to 3 days, or she would move and thus terminate her lease and furthermore result in mine being terminated because I was leasing from her. Okay, cool. I totally thought she was out of line, but I'm a broke college student, so moving again after only being there for a few months was not ideal. Whatever. I apologized for the issue and any smell they smelled and let her know that I would handle it. My boyfriend was in charge of that chore, so he abides by her demands just to keep the peace, as well as taking it further by adding deodorizers to the litter. Some more backstory is that both her and her daughters are cigarette smokers and would smoke in the house and right by the entrance. All of my guests have verified that they do not smell any litter even if they are standing right next to the box. The only thing they could smell was cigarette smoke. This was after I would slyly prompt them by saying, "I think I smell cat litter, do you? I think I may be desensitized." A month later, she sends a text stating that the litter is still an issue and that if it happens again, she is going to evict us as we are endangering the health of her grandson. At this point, she had began terrorizing me at work and at home due to this issue. She was my HR rep, so I was kind of crap out of luck when it came to work because she would be the one that could handle any kind of situation. She's terrible at her job mostly because she's crazy and can't understand that her personal feelings have no place in the professional sphere. At this point, I'm like, forget it, I give up. I've jumped through fiery hoops for this lady, and she still isn't happy. So we respond to her eviction threat with our 60-day notice of termination of our lease. The landlady did not take it well at all, and the atmosphere became more tense because now she had to move as well, as she couldn't afford this place on her own and could not get any other roommate, hence me moving in. During this period, before I moved to my new unit, she repeatedly entered my unit to do laundry, despite it not being her day on the schedule, she wrote, and after I gave explicit notification that she is to wait until I get home to enter my unit to do laundry, I never said no. Just not while I'm not home, because my cat can get skittish if I'm not there and strangers enter his space. She ignored my request, citing that it didn't work for her, and would enter my unit. She would also enter my unit early in the morning after I had left for work, and would enter my unit to do laundry when I was sleeping. Anyways, me leaving the lease early really messed her up because she wasn't prepared to move. She was making baseless threats, and I called her bluff. She couldn't find a new roommate. She couldn't afford the place on her own, and she was struggling to find a place to live because she's crazy and had super weird stipulations like there cannot be a speck of green in her unit and stuff like that. She wanted her niece to move in, but that would require kicking us out a night before we could move into our new place, which she tried to do, but I informed her of the law and said it wasn't happening unless we got a refund for the nights we left early. Ultimately, my parents are amazing and were able to loan me some extra cash so I could move into my new place sooner than the first of the month, so I did that. My landlady's niece had already found other accommodations, so she got done over there because she was going to have to front rent entirely on her own now since she didn't want to refund us for the nights we would have had to forfeit for her niece. Her terribly mannered dogs had done plenty of damage to the unit before we moved in that the owner of the property charged her $400 for, which she promptly tried to blame on us, even though it was her dogs who chewed the baseboards and her own negligence that resulted in her dogs peeing and saturating a wooden door. I switched companies due to her harassment, and as of late, my replacement is messing up the job so badly that the company can't even function day-to-day operations. My replacement was my landlady/HR rep's best friend, so it looks terrible on her. They had to hire an additional person to cover the work that I was doing. I, on the other hand, got a new job in the field in which I'm studying. A bonus was that this new job had better hours, double the pay, less work, and was full-time with benefits, none of which I was getting from my previous employer. My new unit is amazing, and my new landlords are so incredible. My unit is separated from the laundry and pet-friendly, and it has a separate entrance. I'm allowed to burn incense and candles again, which is super nice. Have you ever had a roommate that you just couldn't stand? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for stating publicly that my parents have nothing to do with my talents or hobbies? This started innocently enough a few days ago. With what's going on and working from home, I've been looking for some relaxing things I can do away from my computer/Nintendo. I landed first on cooking and baking, a thing I've always liked, but with more free time I can try new and more challenging recipes. I also took up embroidery instead of video games while I watch TV at night. This is basically a new development in my life as I've never done needlework outside of a brief period when I was 11. I'm over 30 now. A few days ago, I put a photo on Facebook of a meal I'd made for the first time. An oven version of fried fish, roast corn, and some other vegetables. I'd also made a pie for dessert. A few of my parents' friends are Facebook friends of mine, as well as a couple of my cousins and my mom. A lot of them liked the post and commented saying it looked delicious and so on. Over the next couple days, I posted a few more pictures of meals I was proud of, with similar comments. My mom's best friend commented to say I was turning into quite the chef, and so on. Last night, I posted a picture of an embroidery project I just finished. It's nothing special, but it's the first thing I finished in terms of needlework in 20 years. One of my cousins pretty quickly commented to say that between this and the food I had been posting, it was clear that Aunt Sarah, my mom, had spent a lot of time passing down her skills to me. To be honest, that couldn't be further from the truth. When I was a kid, getting interested in these things, my mom had no patience for the fact that I made mistakes. She would make token attempts to teach me cooking or sewing, but if I messed up, she'd lecture me on how I was useless and would never survive without her. Often, she'd take whatever I made and throw it in the garbage because it wasn't perfect, then tell me to do it again. Of course, I stopped trying. When I moved to college and got an apartment, I also bought a basic cookbook. Everything I know how to do in the kitchen now comes from trial and error over the course of over 10 years. My needlework is also self-taught, as my mom only ever taught me one basic stitch as a kid. My reply to my cousin was pretty simple. My mom didn't actually teach me much of this stuff. I'm mostly self-taught. Of course, my mom and her friends saw the comment, and now my dad has called me to chew me out because she's crying over the fact I didn't give her credit for things she didn't do. Am I the jerk? Was it okay for OP to post that comment, or should they not have? Please let us know.
I dare my kid to post a comment like that?
Karen and entitled daughter scream at me, a human on crutches, for sitting in the priority seats on the bus. So, a bit of background. I have a genetic condition that causes me issues with my joints. My joints will randomly dislocate without reason, and it's very painful. My worst joint by far is my right knee. When my knee is really bad and I use crutches, I also can't drive when it's really bad because, well, it hurts really bad, and I don't think it's a good idea to drive on strong painkillers. On this particular day, my knee had come out 4 times before I had even left the house for work. So I got ready, grabbed my crutches, and headed for the bus stop to get to work. Now onto the cast. We've got me, we've got entitled mom, and we've got entitled mom's daughter. So I managed to get to the bus stop, and while there I texted my boss that I was going to be 15 minutes late as I had to get the bus. But I would be in and I would make the time up at lunch. The bus to work is uneventful and pretty empty as I got on the bus at the start of the line. Work was also uneventful, the usual. My ex-boss having a go at me for my knees coming out. Anyway, the day ends. I'm in a huge amount of pain. I've had a few more issues with my knee and I just want to go home. So I walked the 10 minutes or so to the bus stop. On the way back from work, the bus was always rammed. It's after the bus has been through the city, but too close to the city for people to get off. So when I get on the bus, there is no free seats. Someone kindly offers me their seats as I am on crutches, and well, it would be stupid and dangerous to be stood up on the bus using crutches. I put my headphones in and start to think about what I want to eat when I get home. And that's when it happens. The entitled mom appears from nowhere. She taps me on the shoulder, and the following happens. Entitled mom.
Excuse me, young lady. Those are the priority seats. Can you please get up and let me sit down?
Me. Sorry, I can't do that. I point at my crutches as I'm not sure how she missed them. Entitled mom.
Well, you are younger than me. I doubt you need them anyway. Get up now and give me your seat.
Me. Look, I'm not giving you my medical history, but I can assure you that I'm not on these for fun. I cannot stand up on the bus. I am entitled to be here. Entitled mom's daughter.
Stop being so rude. Get up and stop being lazy, you attention-seeking jerk.
At this point, I'm mad. Me. Look, I'm not moving. For you or anyone else. I can see 3 other people all set on the seats, so go get them to move. At this point, someone gets up and gives the old lady her seat. Too little, too late, but whatever. Entitled mom.
No, I don't want your seat. You are older than this lazy jerk who is refusing to move for me. You sit down.
The lady insists, and the woman eventually sits down. Entitled mom's daughter.
See, it's not that hard to respect the elders.
I put my headphones back in and enjoy the rest of my journey home. Lucky they got off at the very end of the route, the stop after mine. So when I get up, I fall and stomp on the woman's foot with my crutch. I hope you enjoyed this. I have a lot more. Old people like to forget that the seats are there for those who are less able to stand, not just the elderly. Am I the jerk for not loaning my sister money for vacation? Okay, so this happened last night, and I'm posting because I am truly baffled by the entire experience. I, 21 female, am dating Howie, 22 male, who comes from a very wealthy family, while I come from a poor family. Since I've started dating Howie, I've been blessed with the opportunity to move out, continue schooling, and learn how to manage my finances with the help of Howie and his family. Because of this, I'm more comfortable financially than my sister, Jill, who's 23, which has led me to being able to help her in the past anytime she needs financial assistance. In March, Jill planned and paid for a vacation for spring break, but because of what's going on now, it's caused her to have to reschedule to leave this Friday. Jill has also been receiving $750 a week for unemployment since April. The problem arose when she didn't get her unemployment this week due to some issue with the system, which meant she couldn't go on her trip because she didn't have any money. She also couldn't get any refunds for her flights or hotel, so she was looking at losing $1,000 if she didn't go, which I sympathize with. So last night, Jill messaged Howie on Facebook and basically said, I need you to loan me $750 for my vacation, and I will pay you back when my unemployment comes in. Also, don't get mad at OP because she doesn't know I'm asking you. When Howie told me this, I was speechless. I never expected her to ever ask him for that kind of money, let alone go behind my back to do it. While Howie may come from a rich family, he does not have unlimited resources and has a strict budget he has to follow every month. Jill is also notorious for not paying people back, especially her family. Not to mention, Jill has never once tried to establish a bond of any form with Howie in the 2 years that we've been together. With this being the first time Jill has ever tried to communicate with Howie, it made him feel like she only cared about him for his money and not him as a person. I decided to handle the situation so Howie wouldn't have to. I thought it was best to wait until this morning to respond to her. I sent her a text basically saying that, while I sympathize with your situation, it was wrong for you to go behind my back to ask my boyfriend for that kind of money for a vacation. I am hurt that you didn't even try to talk to me about it because you know I would do anything to help you, even if that means splitting my last $400 between us so that you can have money to go on your trip. She responded by saying, if I can't come to you guys, then you shouldn't tell me that you would help me if I ever needed it. Don't worry, I'll never ask you guys for anything again. Now we've told her in the past that we would help her if she ever needed it, but we meant for emergencies, not like, hey, I blew through $1,500 this month, and now I'm broke, so I can't go on my vacation unless you help me. Apparently, that is not how she sees it. So, am I the jerk for this? What do you think? Should Howie go ahead and give her that $750 or not? Please let us know.
Of course he should. She needs to go on her vacation.
Am I the jerk for not giving back my dog? Over a year ago, I adopted an older dog who was 8 years old from a local rescue center. At the time, I was told that he had been adopted as a 2-year-old, then returned by the family at 7 years old to the center, as included in the contract you sign when you adopt through the center. After being returned to the center, he had been taken to a few homes, but returned within a couple weeks each time. He had been at the center for around a year. Since I adopted him, he has regrown all of his missing fur and no longer has bald spots from scratching so much from his untreated chronic allergies. He is being treated now with a daily pill for the allergies, $60 a month, and joint supplements for his stiff bones. He has also become best friends with my other dog and is wonderful with the foster dogs and puppies that come through my door and go on to their forever homes. I have recently been contacted by the center I adopted him from. A member of the family he was originally with has come forward and wants him back. They gave him up over 2 years ago. I don't know why they decided to take him back to the shelter. I don't know what changed then or now. Am I the jerk for not wanting to give him back to this person? He's my sweet old man. I would miss him terribly. Edit. A couple people asked why the center even contacted me. As a foster dog parent, I post pictures of my fosters on Facebook. The old owner saw one and contacted the center with concerns. They said that they wanted him back and that he shouldn't be with me because I was obviously unfit to have a dog with this temperament and foster. The center contacted me to make sure he wasn't giving me problems. When I asked why they called me, they told me what the caller had said. The only temperament problems this dog has is that he has to be drugged and muzzled at the vet, which I have no problem blaming on previous owners. He is happy to let me muzzle him and is great anywhere and with anyone else. Old man is staying with me until he goes to the Rainbow Bridge. This just got in my head, and especially after the post I mentioned at the beginning of the ask. Speaking of dogs, do any of you have a dog? And if so, what kind? Please let us know.
Teacup chihuahuas for the win.
Am I the jerk for not wanting my vacation to be a family reunion? Background. Me, 26, and my boyfriend, 27, have been together for almost 5 years. Our last 2 anniversaries, in March, we flew to Florida to stay at my Nana's snowbird condo. She stays there January through April of every year. It's perfect because we only pay flights and activities without paying to stay there. And I adore my Nana, as does my boyfriend, so it's been a great way to spend a week with her. This past trip, my sister and her boyfriend, both 24, invited themselves even though I didn't tell them the exact dates we'd be there. Then my parents booked flights and all of them came the same dates we were, even though it was my mom's 3rd trip in as many months. At first, I thought it would be fine as I told my mom explicitly that this was my vacation and not a family one, and we'd spend some time together, but the point was mine and my boyfriend's plans are ours alone. She claimed she was okay with it, but we spent half the trip arguing over daily plans and how we weren't spending enough time together as a family. Plus, how late we stay up/sleep, how we need to get outside more, why are we doing this instead of that, etc. My boyfriend and I agreed that next year we would just go ourselves, since the first year when it was just us, plus Nana of course, was absolutely perfect. My mom has already been mentioning how that trip can become a yearly reunion for all of us, since my boyfriend and I now live across the country from them. I haven't outright told her no yet. We've been fighting about an upcoming trip in 2 weeks, so didn't see the need to fight about one in 8 months also, and I've just been changing the subject when it comes up. I fully intend to have that discussion once this other argumentative trip is over. But am I the jerk for not wanting my annual anniversary trip to become the new family reunion? And just wanting it to be about my boyfriend and I spending a week together with my dear Nana? Edit to add, the trip wouldn't be until March of 2021, if it is deemed safe at that time. Edit 2. Just to be clear, my parents visited me across the country for nearly a week, almost every month for 7 months, so we definitely get enough family time. Also, the only reason I act like I have veto power on if they can come to Nana's condo is because my mom has been asking me if it's okay if she makes it a reunion every year for us all. Thank you for all your comments/ideas/etc. I'll post an update with how the conversation goes. My father's third wife rips up the carpet to try to force him to spend his inheritance. I've had a very rocky relationship with my father. He was very hard to deal with and blamed all of his issues on everyone else in his life. I haven't had much of a relationship with him as an adult, but boy, did he meet his match with his third wife. They met in 1999 on ICQ through the random meet feature. At the time, they were both married to their previous spouses. The four of them started an innocent enough couples friendship, but unbeknownst to my stepmother and her husband, my father and this woman had started an emotional affair online, professing their love to one another while each was going to couples counseling working on their marriage. My stepmother was even telling this woman her deep down feelings about the relationship, a huge betrayal now that she knows that this woman was using it against her. When they finally told their spouses, seemingly timed in a way to cause the most pain, they decided she would move from her home in Louisiana to Indiana and start a life together while their spouses struggled to understand what had happened. I have never forgiven my father for the narcissism this took on both of their parts, but he just blamed it on my stepmother, convinced I would one day come to accept them as a couple. He was so in denial about how bad the rift between us had grown after the years that they even bought me Christmas presents that year, convinced I would come home. I didn't speak to him for years. I was young and angry, and I needed space. The first time I met her was at my grandfather's funeral years later. She seemed nice enough, but she absolutely wanted to hear nothing negative about my father and was quick to make snide remarks about my mother and stepmother. She was convinced that my father's ex-wives had put me against him and her, and that she could suck up to me and have the sort of relationship with me that my stepmother did. I let her add me on AIM, but the conversations just became more and more demanding that I just come and have a relationship with him while he's still blaming the women in his life for everything that's ever gone wrong in his life. For the record, my mother and stepmother never said a negative word about him and encouraged me to have a relationship with him if it was possible. She really believed she was entitled to have the same relationship with me, a person in their 20s who had only just met her and didn't particularly like her, as my stepmother, a woman who had been there for me unconditionally since I was 8. The last straw for me with her was when she messaged me on Facebook and started chewing me out for not wishing my father a happy birthday on his Facebook profile. I had enough of her nonsense, told her off, told her to mind her own business, and blocked her on every platform she had added me on. I didn't speak to her for years, except for a brief exchange at my grandmother's funeral. I didn't have a relationship with her and felt no reason to have to pretend I liked her. I was too busy living my life, going to university, studying abroad, making something of my life, and I didn't need them or their drama. Well, not long after my grandmother's death, they got divorced, and I finally heard the story. See, it turned out my grandparents were rich, and I had no idea growing up. They had managed to save enough money so that all their kids and grandkids would get a generous inheritance. My father, like his sisters, suddenly found himself in possession of $250,000. In the years between, they had moved from Indiana down to Louisiana so she could be close to her aging mother and had a modest house in the suburbs of New Orleans. Now, the story goes that my father, who had switched jobs several times in his life and had a questionable amount of retirement income, decided to do the smart thing and invest the $250,000 for his retirement and/or a rainy day. His wife, on the other hand, wanted to use the money to make improvements to their house, including putting brand new carpet down. He did not think this was necessary and thought that the carpet they had was fine for at least a while longer. His wife was not happy with being told no and decided that she was going to make him spend money on the carpet. So one day while he was at work, she ripped up all the carpet in the house, thinking that, with no carpet in the house, he would have to buy new carpet. He came home that day to bare floors all over the house. From what I hear, she put on her best surprised Pikachu face when he immediately moved out and basically told her to buzz off. They divorced not long after. As the story was being told to me, I looked at the person telling it and said, "I never thought I would encounter someone more manipulative than my father, but it seems he met his match." They really did deserve each other. As an addendum, she contacted my stepmother again not long after they separated, crying about how horrible my father was treating her and acting like this wasn't the same person who already betrayed my stepmother years earlier. It was like she thought they could go back to being old buds. My stepmother told her where to take that BS. None of us have heard from her since. Speaking of carpets, what do you like better, carpets or hard floors? Please let us know.
We like hard floors. Our cats always destroy the carpet.
Am I the jerk for kicking my cousin off of my sister's wedding Zoom call? My older sister and her fiance were planning for over a year for their wedding to be this month. Obviously, they can't have the wedding as planned, but they still would like to get married. So they decided on a Zoom wedding, where all of the family and friends would just call in to watch the officiant, my sister and her fiance. My sister didn't want to be in charge of hosting the Zoom call because she thought it would stress her out. So she asked me, and I gladly accepted. She and her fiance decided to invite everyone they originally wanted to, and it was a very big list. When we were going over the list, my sister mentioned to me that she wanted everyone else to be muted for the majority of the wedding as she was worried others would talk over her and her fiance and, quote, overshadow them on their big day that was already scaled down. However, her and her fiance said that I should unmute everyone at one point so everyone could talk and have a nice time with each other. Fast forward to the day of the wedding. Everyone is muted during the ceremony, which goes great. And so I then unmute everyone and ask to please raise a hand if they'd like to talk so it doesn't get confusing. My cousin, around my age, starts waving his hand crazily, and he's with his longtime girlfriend, also similar age, I guess. He's a very gregarious guy, so I was not surprised. Then he says stuff like, "The bride and the groom are such an inspiration. It's given me the courage to do this." Then turns to his girlfriend and pulls out a box that is the size of an engagement ring box. I immediately saw this as him trying to steal the spotlight, something that he's done since we were kids. Example, he would secretly mess up my sister and I's drawings if the adults would praise ours and booted him off the call. Then I quickly announced that my cousin had technical difficulties and would not be joining again. Everyone else accepted this and went about talking, and my sister and her husband did too. The rest of the wedding went smoothly, except for the fact that my cousin kept texting me angrily, saying that he finally wanted to propose as a surprise with family all around, and I ruined it. My aunt and uncle texted me the same. Am I the jerk? No, you're not. Your cousin is. But what do you guys think? Please let us know in the comments below.
I think it was sweet that he was trying to propose, but whatever.
Break my phone? You'll pay for the damage. I was always the kid people picked on at school. The girls would spread rumors about me, and the boys would harass me nonstop. See, I'd always known that I wanted to be a nanny. I loved babysitting and looking after kids, so it seemed like a natural career choice for me. I made the mistake of telling this to a girl who I thought was my friend, and she proceeded to tell everyone at school. As this was perceived as feminine, I instantly became the target for bullies. There was one boy who loved to terrorize me. I'll call him Jack for the sake of the story. Jack was awful. He would follow me home while throwing things at me, vandalize my schoolwork, call me names, steal my stuff, cut my hair in class, etc. I was terrified of him. It got to the point where I couldn't sleep from the fear of having to deal with him at school the next day. I blame him and his friends for the anxiety I had, and still somewhat have to this day. I reached breaking point not long after Christmas when I was 15. My family never had a lot of money, but we got by. My mom had saved for ages in order to buy me my first phone. No, it wasn't the newest model, but I didn't care. I was so grateful to have my first phone and a little guilty that my mom had gone without her new Christmas outfit and had put off fixing her own phone to buy it for me. Once the schools went back after Christmas break, Jack found out about my phone. He took it from me and proceeded to read through my messages, making fun of me for the lack of contacts and telling my mom I loved her. then threw it to the floor and stomped on it in front of his friends. I was furious, upset, and devastated that this jerk had destroyed something that my mom had worked so hard to buy for me. I started planning my revenge. I knew through the grapevine that Jack's mom was a stay-at-home mom. His dad had a well-paid job, and his mother was quite happy to stay at home with the kids. I also knew, however, that she didn't get to go out much, as Jack would flat out refuse to babysit, and she was pretty picky when it came to who was allowed to look after her kids. I used to babysit her friend's kid, and I was pretty good at it, if I do say so myself. However, for my plan to work, I had to babysit Jack's siblings. I made a few comments here and there to the boy's mom about wanting to get a few more babysitting jobs so I could save up some money for my mom's upcoming birthday. As luck would have it, the lady recommended me to Jack's mom since it had been so long since she had been able to go out with the girls. For the next few weeks, I'd go to Jack's house with the other boy I was babysitting and look after his sisters. Despite Jack's awful attitude, his family were all pretty nice. His sisters were an absolute joy to look after. Jack wasn't usually in the house, but when it was, I could see that he couldn't stand having to be civil with me. His mom would have flipped out if he had been horrible to me in front of her or his sisters. They'd have quickly ratted him out. Once I decided enough time had passed, I put my plan into action. See, Jack was one of those creepy kids that liked to brag about his certain magazine stash in his bedroom. This made him cool to his friends. Never understood why, to be honest. Anyways, every time I'd babysit and put the little ones to bed, I'd sneak into his room and search around. I knew this was a massive invasion of privacy, but I was a stupid 15-year-old and I couldn't take his bullying anymore. I eventually found his stash and made a mental note that they were in a bag in his closet. I'd been observant those few weeks, so I knew that Jack's mom and dad had an unopened bottle of vodka in the fridge. They didn't drink a lot, and it was only for when they were going to parties. One night, once the kids were asleep and Jack was out with his friends, I went to the fridge, opened the bottle, and tipped about a quarter of it down the sink. His parents could afford to buy a new one, by the way. If they couldn't, I'd have done it, and snuck up to Jack's bedroom and hid the bottle in the same bag as his stash. His parents found out about it not too long later, and after Jack accused me of taking it, they showed up at my door. They weren't angry because they still didn't know who had taken it, so they asked me some questions. I denied everything, but was polite and even offered to help them look for it in case it had been misplaced. They thanked me, but told me that it was fine. They'd find it. And oh boy, did they find it. I was called over the next day to take the little ones to the park for an hour or so in order for them to have a talk with Jack. They didn't like arguing in front of the twins. It had frightened them. When I got back, Jack was in his bedroom. If the noises were anything to go by, he was crying. It turns out that he had ratted himself out. His parents found the bottle in his room along with his magazines. He had denied everything and accused me of planting it there. When asked why I'd do that, he ratted himself out by saying that it was payback for him breaking my phone. His parents flipped out. They had no idea their son was such a bully. They took away his phone, grounded him, and made him sell his game console to pay to get my phone fixed. I had been saving up the money myself for a few weeks. My face when they made him hand me the money will stay with me forever. His parents questioned me about the bullying, eventually informing my mom as well. I had hidden it from her and told her I dropped my phone. He got into a lot of crap at school after a few other kids came forward about the bullying they'd endured at the hands of Jack and his friends. A few of them, including Jack, got suspended. Jack's parents even made him go to the door to apologize to the people he had tormented. I was reluctant to take the money at first, as it was way over the amount it would have cost to get my phone fixed, so his parents compromised and told me to take enough to at least cover the repair cost. Needless to say, with the phone repair covered, I managed to get my mom an awesome birthday gift. I know this is really long and really badly written. I'm not a writer, so please forgive me for any errors. Were any of you guys ever bullied in school? And if so, what did you do about it? Please let us know.
I might have given a few swirlies back in my day.
Am I the jerk for refusing to give my sister a car and using the police to take it back from her? At the time, my brother was age 36 to 39. I was 30 to 33, female, and sister was 22 to 25. My dad knew he was dying months ahead of time. He held meetings with his 4 kids. We all got a little money and a dilapidated vehicle or a few. I got a 1974 Porsche 914. Other vehicles went to other siblings. Dad made sure all the paperwork was done before he passed. Everyone received things, agreed Dad's plan was fair, and nobody objected to anything. He passed, sister had all of the vehicle keys. I hired someone to put the Porsche in storage until I could have my house and garage built. Sister was evasive about the keys. Then she and brother suddenly showed up with the car on a trailer. I had to cancel my arrangements, lost my deposit, and hustled to rearrange everything. Brother and sister teased me about this, saying I should just give sister the car if I couldn't handle it. I declined. My house had delays, and sister bought an existing house with a garage, which she offered up for the Porsche. I said no. The car went to brother's field. A few weeks later, sister told me that brother hit the car while putting my Porsche in her garage. Then she began a long game of thwarting my attempts to retrieve it. After 2 years of thwarted attempts, I called the police. They told me to come with a truck and they would stand by. Brother attempted to pick up the car first, but I passed him on the highway. When I arrived at sister's house, she and her boyfriend screamed at length and attracted plenty of attention, disowning me by the end. Sister doesn't speak to me. Mom keeps telling me I need to apologize and give the car back to sister. And brother says, "You gave her that car. I was there." I stand firm that I never gave it to her, nor gave her any reason to believe I would. The paperwork went straight from dad's name to mine, and there was never any wavering on that. I repeatedly said no. Their failure to recognize my no does not make it a yes. After all this, I sold off my property, including the Porsche, and moved across the country. 5 years later, they won't drop it. They still call me the jerk for not giving sister the car, calling the police on my own family, embarrassing sister in front of her neighbors, refusing to apologize, and abandoning my family to live among strangers. So, of course, I think I'm not the jerk. But what do you think? What do you think? Would you have done the same thing if you were in this situation or not? Please let us know.
Oh, I love calling the police on people, especially my family.
The long game. This story comes from my boss, who lives in the small town where it occurred. To set the stage, many decades ago, Barney and Betty immigrated from Europe and bought a farm. A few years later, they had kids and sponsored Wilma from the old country as a nanny. She met Fred, a local boy, fell in love and got married. Wilma stayed on as the nanny, and Fred worked as a farmhand. Their kids and Barney and Betty's kids grew up together, and it was pretty much a big blended family. Years go by, and Barney and Betty decide to sell the farm fields to Farmer Frank, but kept the land the house was on. They made enough off of the sale to build a nice new house and rezone the property lines. They broke up the lot into 2 parcels, one for the new house and one for the existing house, which they gifted to Fred and Wilma as a recognition of the years of dedicated and loving service. Both houses shared a well and a septic field. More time went by. Barney and Betty passed away, and their house was inherited by their son, Bam Bam. Fred also passed away, and Wilma stayed in the house. She was an angel. Everyone in the town knew and loved her. She was like the town's grandmother. She was active in the church and liked nothing more than crocheting for anyone in town who had a baby. Sadly, Wilma passed away too, and her house was inherited by her daughter, Pebbles. She was well established in a nearby metropolitan city and made the decision to sell the house. And so it begins. To give you a better idea of the setup, here is a rough diagram. The parcel for sale is the yellow bit, which backs onto the protected parkland and is bordered by Bam Bam's land and Farmer Frank's fields. It was purchased by a builder from the city, who we'll call Jerk. The name suits him. He wanted it as a country getaway, and he already had a place in the city. He got approval to improve the place, and his plans were to convert the barn into a multi-car garage with a man cave and an apartment in what was the loft. He started by tearing down the house, with plans to replace it with a bigger, more modern house. The house was torn down and the new build was started. The lower part of the yellow represents a very narrow driveway. Between that driveway and Farmer Frank's field was a drainage culvert, so the contractors started parking their vehicles on Bam Bam's lot. Bam Bam asked the contractors not to do it, but they didn't stop. So he approached Jerk, and the conversation didn't go well. Jerk was an entitled big shot, dealing with what he thought was a country bumpkin. To give you an idea, Jerk once went to a local diner and asked for the wine list. He was aggressive and disrespectful, and this pretty much set the tone for all future interactions. Bam Bam had enough. These contractor trucks were tearing up his ground, so one weekend he built a fence along the border between his house and Jerk's. It wasn't a complicated fence. He just got a buddy with a post hole digger on his Bobcat, sunk posts, and strung planks between them. This caused no end of trouble with the build. There was no room to park in the yellow for the contractors without getting in each other's way, and they couldn't park in the driveway, which was only wide enough for one vehicle at a time. Contractors were upset. They had a long walk from the road to the build site and had to carry tools and equipment back and forth. Either that or take turns dropping materials, waiting hours for the carpenters to finish unloading the lumber so that the plumbers could unload the pipes. Jerk was furious and came stomping over to Bam Bam, demanding that he dismantle the fence. Bam Bam told him to go to heck. Then, a day later, Bam Bam saw that someone had removed some of the fence and the contractor's trucks were back on his land. Okay, thought Bam Bam, let's play. The following weekend, Bam Bam irrigated the area where the contractors were parking. Irrigated it long and continuously. He probably had to get a water delivery to make it happen, as the well had a limited capacity. On Monday, the first contractor to arrive turned off Jerk's driveway to go through the fence and immediately sank up to his axles in mud. Did I mention that Bam Bam owned the local service station and knew every tow truck company within 100 miles? As it turned out, everyone they called was too busy to pull the truck out, and they had to call a tow truck from the city, almost 2 hours away. You can now see how the relationship between Bam Bam and Jerk became somewhat less than neighborly. Time went by, and Jerk's house was completed. It was a low-maintenance setup with interlocking brick over the compound, tall hedges separating Jerk from Bam Bam. They kept out of each other's way, but they certainly weren't pals. Jerk's kids would come up on the weekend and have a party now and then, but Bam Bam put up with it. One issue that arose was when Jerk decided to fill the small swimming pool that he had installed. This drew the well dry and caused some sand to be pulled into the water treatment equipment. When Bam Bam approached Jerk about the cost of the repair via email, Jerk basically replied that it was Bam Bam's problem. The same when the septic holding tank needed to be pumped. Bam Bam offered to split the cost of the pumping, and Jerk refused to part with a dime. Years passed, and Jerk decided to list the house for sale. That's when Bam Bam made his move. He cut the water and capped the septic line leading to Jerk's house. Then he informed the real estate agent of what he had done. Well, that induced a thunderstorm. For sure, there's no way Jerk could sell a house that had no water or any way to dispose of waste. He couldn't build a septic field on his property, it was too small. He approached Farmer Frank to buy some of his land, but was rebuffed. His only option would have been to install a septic holding tank, but the only place to put it would have been right in the middle of his compound, and septic tanks can be aromatic. It would also have meant removing the in-ground pool. Jerk tried to argue in court that he was entitled to access the well water and the septic field, but Bam Bam won, arguing that Wilma and Fred were given water and septic as a courtesy and that there was no contractual obligation to provide Jerk either well water or septic access. There was nothing in the deed to Wilma and Fred that could be grandfathered in, and Jerk's emails refusing to pay for maintenance to either system was the nail in the coffin. The property sat vacant and unusable for months. The price dropped through the floor, and the few people that expressed an interest in the property approached Bam Bam with varying offers of cash to restore service. Bam Bam declined. No offers were made to Jerk for the house. Finally, Jerk did receive an offer from a numbered corporation, an offer that was about a quarter of the asking price, as is, with a statement that the buyer was aware that there was no water or septic service to the property. Without much choice, Jerk accepted the offer. And that's how Bam Bam bought himself a beautiful, modern country home at a steal of a price. He reattached the water and septic in an afternoon and moved his furniture down the driveway. He rented out his old house for extra money and had the numbered company negotiate with himself for an arrangement for perpetual use of his well and septic, thereby jacking the value of the house up by a factor of 4. Later, if he decides to sell it, he'll be making a massive profit. Bam Bam now enjoys a country paradise and is the social king of the hill in his town, all because Jerk decided to be a jerk. Am I the jerk for borrowing my husband from our room tonight? So here's the situation. I'm a nurse. I work 50 hours a week in pediatric ICU. Cry at least once a week because it's hard. My salary pays our bills, all of them. My husband is 25. He has a degree but isn't looking for a job. He works 2 days a week at the grocery store. He spends most of his time playing League of Legends. Today was supposed to be a good day. I had been begging my husband to swap his Saturday shift to literally anything else so that we could have days off together. We haven't had a weekend together since our wedding 18 months ago. Today was supposed to be our first Saturday off together. We were going to go to an animal sanctuary. He starts the day by going to breakfast with his best mate, leaving before I even wake up. I wake up around 9 and realize he's not home. I call. He says he's helping his mate set up some lights and that the weather is too rainy for the animal sanctuary anyway. He gets home around 1-ish. lies around, plays some video games, promising we would cook dinner together tonight. He leaves again at 5 to help the same mate with something else. I go grocery shopping. I don't drive because of medical issues, but I walk there and back in the rain. I get home, realize I've left my keys inside. I call my husband, knowing he's 5 minutes away. He says he'll leave in a minute. I sit in the rain and the cold, southern hemisphere. 45 minutes later, I call again. He hasn't left yet. He finally agrees to come and let me in the house, so he drives up, presses the clicker to let me in the garage, and leaves again. At 10, I call to see where he is. His friend answers, says he's driving out to do something an hour away. It's 10:30. I'm going to bed. I have sent him a text that I am upset and don't want to speak to him tonight and would rather be left alone. As far as I'm concerned, if he can't value me more than his best mate on the first day off he and I shared in a year and a half, he can go sleep in his own bed instead. By the way, his friend doesn't work, so they hang out all the time when I'm at work. He's going to be upset, and he's going to tell his mate, and his mate is going to tell him I'm being a jerk. Am I the jerk? Adding some info. I'm 26. We weren't always like this. I don't know what changed. I'm fairly confident he's not having an affair, and I fully intend on talking this through, but at a time that isn't 4 a.m. Also, the crying. Sick babies sometimes make me sad, and I love all my patients. That's why I cry. Also, thank you for your kindness. I was expecting maybe 5 replies. I'm trying to respond as much as I can, but there are a lot of you. What would you say to your significant other if they made you feel like this? Please let us know. My sister, the scammer. My younger sister is a major drama queen. She was diagnosed as bipolar when she was 13 and has used it to get away with crap for years. She's lived in her own flat with a deadbeat dad for a boyfriend for 6 years. They've never paid the full month's rent on the place, for various reasons, like she had to take unpaid leave to look after her mental health, etc. Not having the money to pay for rent has nothing to do with them only buying takeaway for food every day and going to cinema twice a month. Last year, she decided it would be fun to get pregnant. Her other half has 2 kids he hasn't seen for 5 years and is currently refusing to get a job, so the child support agency can't take his money to pay for the kids. Every member of the family during her pregnancy got calls telling them what stuff they were buying for the baby. From milk to a $3,000 pram to a $2,000 cot bed. 3 days before the kid was born, she threw a tantrum because no one would drop $3,000 in a gaming computer for her and her other half to play on. The day the kid came, she said the computer would be for entertaining the kid, and we're all jerks for refusing to get them one. They still didn't have everything for the kid at this point, as it was nearly a month early. She talked my father into moving in for a few weeks after the kid was born to help out. He got trapped down there because of lockdown and used as a slave from what I hear. He's too soft to leave. The stick that broke the camel's back is that she has spent more money getting anime and crap than baby stuff, then calls the family begging for money to pay the bills. When my brother didn't answer her last call, she texted him saying our father was in the hospital because he's gotten sick and he needed to call her ASAP. So he calls her, and it turns out all she wanted was to ask if she could borrow money. She's been complaining to anyone who will listen that he was out of order for screaming at her and telling her to never call him again. Apparently, I'm out of order for saying she needs slapping and made to be a grown-up. She's 30 now. Time to stop babying her. Edit. My father has a lot of guilt from working full-time while we were growing up, and being there for the grandkids is his way of dealing with it. My son has wanted very little from his granddad. Part of the reason my father hasn't come home yet is because my sister lives on the south coast of the UK while we live in sunny Blackpool, over 250 miles away. He doesn't feel safe driving that far while people are still being idiots. Entitled mom thinks I should pay her kid for work he didn't do. First off, I am disabled. I'm a one-legged amputee and had a stroke a couple years ago. I've recovered mostly from the stroke. Some paralysis in my left arm still, but I can still do most things I did before. I also live alone and am pretty independent. One thing I can't do is mow my yard. I live in a very big lot. The backyard is big enough for a couple more houses to be there, and the front and side are almost as big. I do have a riding mower, but I have a tendency to fall off when I use it. One leg and poor sense of balance, not a great combination. A neighbor's teenage son would mow it for me once a week for $50. He graduated and went into the military, so I had to find someone new this year. I have a friend who will mow for me for free, but I don't like to impose on him, and I figure most teens could use an extra $50. Last year, some new neighbors moved in, consisting of a mother in her early 40s and her 2 sons. I didn't know about the boy's father, but she apparently had a number of boyfriends who were always coming over and staying overnight. The older son, about 17, was always outside working on an old car he had. I got to talking to him, and he said he was trying to get it running but couldn't afford all the parts he needed. So I offered him the same deal I had with the other kid. I'd pay him $50 a week for the kid to use my riding mower to mow the yard once a week. He jumped at it. The first couple of weeks went pretty good. I'd go ahead and pay him in advance, and then he mowed the yard. That way, if I had to leave or was napping, he didn't have to wait for his money. The third week he came, he asked if he could use my mower on his yard. His yard is tiny compared to mine. My backyard alone is almost twice the size of his front and back together. I told him to go ahead. I was going to a friend's house and would be back later and paid him. I came back that evening, but it was too dark to really see the yard. The next day, I saw that my yards had not been mowed. I rolled over to his house with its newly trimmed yard and knocked. His mother answered. Now, I've never seen his mother wearing anything but an old terry cloth robe and house shoes. She apparently doesn't work or really do much of anything. I asked for the kid, and she said he had gone somewhere with his friends. I thought that was strange with everything going on. Not surprising though. I've never seen anyone at that house wearing a mask. I wear one anytime I leave the house. Anyway, I didn't see him that day, so my yard didn't get mowed. A couple days later, it rained for a bit, so it was getting pretty tall. A few days later, he came over, wanting to mow. He asked about the pay, and I told him he had never mowed it last week, so I'm not paying him this week. He made some comment about rain, and then about it being so high this time. I told him if he had mowed when he was supposed to, it wouldn't be so tall. He had already been paid for work he didn't do, and I wasn't going to pay him again. As he walked away, I heard him say, "Jerk." Shortly after that, his mom came over in her bathrobe and house shoes. I answered the door, and this was the conversation. Entitled Mom.
You need to pay my son.
Me. I paid him last week for something he didn't do. I'm not paying him again.
But it rained last week. He couldn't mow. You can't blame him for the weather.
Me. It didn't rain until 2 days after he was supposed to mow. He didn't have any trouble mowing your yard.
My yard is not that big. Yours is huge.
Me. Which is why I have a riding mower.
Well, just pay him and he'll mow it.
Me. He still hasn't mowed it after the last time I paid him.
Well, I won't let him mow it unless you pay him. Then what will you do?
I have a friend who will mow it for free. I was really just helping your son out. Entitled Mom, sneering at me.
You're just a cripple. You don't have friends.
Me. Yeah, I'm a cripple, but I guarantee I have more friends than some lazy, bloated jerk like you. Yeah, that really got her mad.
You'll be sorry. I know people who will kick your sorry butt. You'll be sorry you spoke to me like that.
Me. Thank you. That's definitely loud enough for the microphone to pick up. Now turn around and smile for the camera. I pointed to the security camera mounted on the eave of my house, pointed at the front door. Me. I'm sure the police will enjoy hearing that you just threatened me. You know it's a felony to threaten a vulnerable person. Probably not, but it sounded good. She stuck her hand up in front of my face and took off back to her own house. I heard the door slam. Didn't see her for the rest of the day. My friend came over and mowed the next day, and I saw the kid out by his car watching. That night, he came over and apologized. We had a long talk, and honestly, he's not a bad kid. He's had a tough life. His father left when he was little, and his half-brother, who's 14, lives with his own father and only comes to stay occasionally. His mother doesn't even try to do anything but sleep and go to bars at night and bring home guys. She takes any money he gets. That's why he wanted to get paid. She insisted that he gives her money. He's been trying to get money for the car parts, but she always takes his money. So I offered, instead of paying him in cash, I would just buy him the parts he needs. He loved the idea, and by mowing before noon when she was still asleep, she wouldn't even know he was mowing for me. He wants to move out, but he has nowhere to go. I found out he turns 18 in a couple months, and I've told him he could stay with me then, as long as he obeyed the rules of my house. He's worried about what his mom might do, but I told him she can't do anything once he's 18. Besides, she tends to hide her face and go inside whenever she sees me. He told me she's scared I might take the video to the police, and she's already been in trouble with the law. Besides, I happen to know the owners of that house are selling it, and she'll have to move soon anyway. Funniest part of this is that the camera doesn't even work. The previous owner put it up and didn't take it with them. I just never took it down and have never even messed with it. Speaking of mowing the lawn, do you like mowing the lawn or do you hate it? Please let us know.
You'd have to ask my gardener. I don't bother with such things.
Am I the jerk for forgetting to wake up my boyfriend for work? I'm 20 and my boyfriend's 22, and we've been together for 3 years and have been living together for 1.5 years. He's always relied on me to wake him up for work. He works front desk at a hotel. I don't mind doing this, and it has never bothered me. He always tells me exactly what time he wants to be woken up. I set an alarm and wake him up accordingly. Last night, he never mentioned having work in the morning and never told me to wake him up at a certain time. So of course, I didn't set an alarm. This morning, he jumped awake, asking what time it was. I told him 7 a.m., which is the time his shift starts, and he became furious. He called me a stupid jerk for not waking him up, and I should have known he had work. I understand his point of view. I've been waking him up for work for 3 years, so maybe I should have known. But because of what's going on, his work schedule has been very different than how it used to be. He picks up whatever shift he can, so how could I have known? I'm typing this in the car right now on our way to his work. We share my car, and he's been giving me the silent treatment this whole time, and I'm feeling conflicted. Am I the jerk? Update. When I got home after dropping him off at work, his parents, we live with his family, were clowning on him as soon as I walked in the door. They were pretty much echoing what the majority of you are commenting. He's an adult. He should be able to wake himself up. It's not your fault. And they were also stomping around the kitchen to make fun of him. I feel better now. Thank you to everyone who responded. Edit. Wow, I really was not expecting this much of a response. So let me just add something I should have said originally. He sleeps like a corpse. It's really difficult for him to wake up to an alarm, which is why I've never had a problem with waking him. This obviously doesn't make it okay for him to snap at me the way he did, and I've realized that thanks to your responses. I'll sit him down after work and talk to him. Update 2. So we talked. He insisted that he did tell me to wake him up. So of course I apologized for not remembering him telling me. He then apologized for the way he reacted. He said, "I'm sorry for resorting to insulting you in my moment of frustration." I accepted. He's trying really hard to make me laugh and smile, so I believe he is truly sorry for the name calling and yelling. I'm still feeling a little hurt, but I'll get over it. Thank you everyone for your advice and for your concern and kindness. What do you think? What would you do if your significant other treated you this way? Please let us know.
I'd tell that boy to go buy an alarm clock.
Landlord tries to rip me off for 400 pounds, ends up paying me over 6.5 thousand. Last year, I moved out of a house that I had rented for 5 years with no problems. I always had a good relationship with the landlord. There are 2 relevant bits of backstory to this story. 1. In the UK, where I live, the standard practice when renting a house is to sign a tenancy agreement for a year. At the end of the year, if you want to stay in the house and the landlord is happy with you, you can just do nothing and the tenancy will continue automatically until either the tenant or landlord give a notice. Alternatively, you can sign a new 1-year tenancy agreement each year, which isn't really necessary, but some landlords want it. My landlord wanted me to sign a new tenancy agreement each year. Fine, whatever. So since I rented the house for 5 years, there were 5 tenancy agreements in total. 2. By law, the landlord was required to protect my security deposit. That meant she had to put it into a special kind of account within 30 days of receiving it. The tenant then receives login details for the account so that they can check that it's protected and view various info about it. One point of doing this is so that the deposit is held by an independent party who can mediate if the landlord and tenant disagree about any deductions. There is a dispute process that the tenant can request and which is free for the tenant to use. So I had been living in the house for almost 5 years and I gave notice to end the tenancy because I was buying a house. After I had given notice, the landlord emailed me to ask if I was planning to hire a gardener to ensure that the garden would be returned to the pretty manicured state it was in when I moved in. I thought this was strange because my tenancy agreement explicitly forbade me from doing the sort of things in the garden that would have been necessary to maintain its original state, such as it said I was not allowed to lop any shrubs or bushes. So all I had been doing is cutting the grass in the hedge. Basically, that clause looked like something that a landlord would include if they planned to maintain the garden themselves, except she didn't maintain it while I was living there. In retrospect, it seemed that she didn't read her own tenancy agreement properly. I replied to the landlord's email about the garden. I quoted the part of the tenancy agreement that forbade me from doing certain things in the garden and expressed my confusion. I asked her to clarify what her expectations were about the state of the garden, given what it said in the tenancy agreement. She didn't reply, but a couple of weeks later, I received an email from her husband/boyfriend telling me that the landlord was anxious about the garden and I should ensure that it is returned to the same state as at the start of the tenancy. I replied to him and again asked for clarification, given the wording of the tenancy agreement. He replied, saying he'd have the landlord get back to me herself, which she never did. Without any guidance about the garden, I just did my best with it. My boyfriend, who is an experienced gardener, did the work here. I asked him just to do whatever he thought was best. He cut back bushes and cleared loads of stuff. I spent a few £100 on having garden waste removed. I knew that technically I did not need to do that, but wanted to do what I could to keep relations good between me and the landlord. I moved out, the tenancy ended, and after not hearing anything from the landlord for a couple of weeks and not having my deposit back, I emailed the landlord to ask about the deposit. Having ignored my queries about the garden before the end of the tenancy, she chose this moment to announce that she wanted to deduct £400 from my deposit to carry out work on the garden. There followed a really time-wasting back and forth by email in which I pointed out that the terms of the tenancy agreement were incompatible with my being able to maintain the original state of the garden, and she just kept repeating that the garden was not returned to her in its original state. In the end, I suggested that since we couldn't agree about deductions from my deposit, we should use the independent dispute process offered by the company that was holding the deposit. The process needs to be kicked off by the landlord, so I asked her to authorize it. She didn't do that. Instead, she kept wasting my time by sending me emails trying to negotiate an amount to put the garden right, which I wasn't going to entertain. Meanwhile, I could not log into the account where my deposit was being held. I contacted the company, and it turned out that my landlord had accidentally input my email address incorrectly when registering the deposit, which I found very strange because she had emailed me successfully dozens of times throughout the time I was living in the house, so she definitely knew my email address. Without being able to log in, I was unable to officially dispute any deductions she was proposing. There's a window of 3 months after the end of the tenancy when you can dispute any deductions. After that, you either take what the landlord is willing to return or go to court. Apparently, according to Justice for Tenants, who I contacted for advice, it's relatively common for unscrupulous landlords to register their tenants' details incorrectly in an attempt to make it harder for them to recover their deposits in the time frame available for disputes. I had a long back and forth with the deposit company, after which I finally gained access to my deposit account. When I got into it, I looked at the info and noticed that the landlord had not protected my deposit until the day after I gave her notice to end the tenancy. That meant she protected my deposit well after the 30-day deadline by which she was supposed to do it by law. There are penalties for landlords that fail to comply with the laws around tenancy deposits. If they break the rules and the tenant takes them to court, they have to return the full deposit plus between 1 and 3 times the amount of the deposit as compensation. Also, they're not allowed to make any deductions from a tenant's deposit if they haven't complied with the law. I emailed the landlady a bit more firmly than I had previously. Things had been cordial, but increasingly frosty. I pointed out that she could not make any deductions from my deposit because she had not complied with the law. She responded by sending me a quite tantrumy, insulting email and authorizing the return of my full deposit. So, yay for the deposit back. But what a jerk insulting me when I hadn't done anything wrong. I was upset by the fact that she tried to rip me off and wasted hours and hours of my time trying to sort this out. Not to mention the stress. Just seeing an email from her land in my inbox caused my stomach to flip by this point. This is when things started to get a bit more exciting. As I said above, landlords who don't comply with the law around tenancy deposits have to pay between 1 and 3 times the value of the deposit in compensation, plus return the full deposit if they get taken to court. The documentation from the tenancy deposit scheme proved that she had broken the law. I had already had my deposit back, but it was clear that if I took her to court, I would receive a minimum of that amount again. Except, of course, I didn't have just the one tenancy agreement with her. As I already mentioned, she had insisted on my signing a new tenancy agreement every year, so I had had 5 tenancy agreements in total. I spent a few hours checking the law and going through old emails and documentation, and it turned out that she had failed to protect my deposit correctly in all of the 5 tenancies I had with her. I had a ton of documentation to prove that. That meant that, if I took her to court, I stood to receive a minimum of not 1, but 5 times the amount of my original deposit, over £6,500. It would cost me a couple of £100 to take her to court, and I was 100% willing to do that. In fact, at this point, I was relishing that prospect. In order to take her to court, I first had to send her a letter before action, in which I set out my complaint against her and gave her an opportunity to make an offer to avoid going to court. I had a barrister friend who was helping me out at this point with advice for free. The landlord replied to my letter quite dismissively, basically saying that it was clearly just an admin error that caused her to fail to protect my deposit correctly every year for 5 years, and accusing me of being motivated by a windfall. I replied by email, correcting her various mistaken assumptions and repeating the need for her to make an offer in order to avoid court. After a while, she replied and offered me £4,000. I told her that the minimum I would accept was a little over $6,500. I forgot the exact figure, since that was the minimum I would stand to get in court. She agreed, with certain conditions attached, perhaps conditions that she thought I might not be able to fulfill. Things like sending her copies of all the documentation relating to the deposit for previous year's tenancies, but which I was able to do immediately. When the money landed in my bank account, I emailed her to explain that I would have dropped my complaint against her immediately had she at any point offered a sincere apology, which was true, at least up until that final email where she insulted me. I also said that I hoped she would deal more fairly and reasonably with future tenants. She didn't reply. I hope that I will never again be a tenant, but having spent many years being messed around by jerky landlords and letting agents, it was satisfying to end my renting days in such a satisfying and profitable way. Am I the jerk for washing my boyfriend's clothes? I'm 22 and my boyfriend is 27. He asked me to wash some of his clothes for him since I was doing laundry today. I told him to put any clothes he wanted washed in my hamper and I'd include them. He left his wallet and a pair of pants to be washed, but I didn't notice as I was putting them into the washing machine, and I assumed he would have checked them anyway, considering he had already put them in my hamper. So basically, I accidentally washed his wallet. He was looking to leave the house, and he is notorious for misplacing his keys and wallet and then freaks out when he can't find them and he wants to leave and couldn't find his wallet. So he starts getting angry and asking if I've seen it. I asked him if he maybe left them in the pants he asked me to wash. He says, "You didn't check? What the heck?" And I said, "No, I don't leave my wallet in my pants, so I don't think to check." Cue anger from him. I go and stop the wash cycle. It had been running for about 5 minutes, and check, and lo and behold, there's his wallet, soaked. Luckily, literally, nothing was ruined. All of his business cards, money, ID, etc. is totally fine, just needs a little while to dry. But he is so incredibly, seemingly irrationally angry at me and said I was being careless and that I've ruined his day by accidentally washing his wallet. At first, I apologized, but now I'm kind of upset that he blames me completely and is telling me to never touch his clothes again. "Let's not talk about it, because I'm too mad to speak to you," etc. I feel like it was an honest mistake, and quite frankly, now I'm upset with him for making such a big deal out of it. He's stomping around the house like a toddler right now, slamming doors because he doesn't get to go to the gun show he wanted to, but I don't understand why he can't go with a wet wallet. None of the cash he has set aside was even in the wallet, so it's all dry. Anyway, I want to know if I'm biased and if I really did do anything wrong by not checking his pants and even giving him some sass by saying, "I don't leave my wallet in my pants." Am I the jerk? Well, what do you think? Did the boyfriend overreact, or was he right? Please let us know.
He needs to get with that alarm clock boy and they can have a good cry together.
Bought a new Nintendo Switch to reward myself. Entitled mother wanted me to give it to her since she doesn't buy stuff for entitled kid. I work in a Starbucks coffee shop located in a mall where Karens are known to swarm. I've heard a few stories about them arguing about their coffee not being done properly, but I didn't think that I would experience an encounter with one myself. Unfortunately, I did. After getting paid minimum wage brewing coffee for 3 months, I finally saved enough money to buy myself a Nintendo Switch, which the gaming store in the mall sold for about $500. My first mistake was buying it on a Saturday, which was the day entitled parents usually bring their kids to the mall. At that time, I didn't really think much about it, as the chances of actually having an episode was low. So on that day, after I was done with my shift, I went to the store and paid for a Switch, along with a few games like Smash Brothers and Breath of the Wild. While the store employee was scanning my card, I glanced around at my surroundings in order to avoid having awkward eye contact with the employee, and outside I saw entitled mom, around 40ish, and entitled kid, around 10ish. They looked pretty normal, so I didn't think too much about them. When I took the paper bag and carried it out of the store, entitled kid somehow noticed that I was carrying a Nintendo Switch. Maybe he already knew while I was in the store, and began to beg entitled mom for one. I knew that it was a normal reaction for a kid, so I ignored him and continued walking to the exit of the mall. Suddenly, entitled mom shrieked loudly and scared the crap out of me.
I recognize you. You're the guy at Starbucks.
Since I obviously didn't know who entitled mom was, I just replied with a, "Yeah, I work there."
Listen, my son really wants that Nintendo Switch. It's his birthday tomorrow, and since you're not gonna play with it anyway, you should just give it to me.
From entitled kid's reaction, I could obviously tell that she was lying, and I said, "Well, it's only $500. You could buy one yourself." Obviously, replying was a mistake. I should have just walked away. Now entitled mom was mad. She shouted,
You wouldn't have time to play it anyways. You have a job. My son doesn't have any toys at home to play with, so you better give him the Switch.
I was just shocked at how she demanded me to just give away a $500 console. It was her fault that she didn't buy entitled kid toys, so she shouldn't go around asking for free stuff. I had a feeling this wasn't the first time that entitled mom had done this. Entitled kid was practically begging entitled mom to stop with this stuff. Luckily, before the situation escalated, the store employee that helped me with the purchase earlier saw the whole thing and offered entitled kid a secondhand PSP, probably to not only calm entitled mom down, but also maybe because he felt sorry that entitled kid had to deal with this crap every day and gave him some form of entertainment. I thanked the store employee for helping me with the situation and even gave him a $10 tip as a way of showing my appreciation. Even though entitled kid was happy as heck about his new PSP, entitled mom was giving me a stone-cold glance as I walked away from her. Until now, I'm still afraid that I'll have another episode with her because she knows that I work at Starbucks, but I can only hope for the best. Edit. A lot of people have been saying this, and I've checked. $500 included the games as well. It was the total cost of all the things I bought. I was just stupid and forgot that I've bought the games too. Edit 2. I know the kid isn't entitled. I even said he reacted like a normal kid, but I didn't know what to call him, so I just went with entitled kid. Speaking of Switch, what's your favorite game on the Switch? Please let us know.
I'll take any of you on Smash. I guarantee it.
Taking down Queen Karen, president of the HOA. Okay, so this happened years ago, 1985 to be exact. I was 45 when this happened, 81 now. So after my second retirement, I started doing property management. I bought this 2,500 square foot luxury home with the sole intention of renting it out. Now, I didn't know how bad the HOA was, but when I became the owner, I soon found out. This all took place in 2 years' time. Karen would literally have a problem with everyone in the neighborhood. Trash cans left out? Fined. Loud music after 10 p.m.? Fined. Yard sale without permission? Fined. Removing dead plants and replacing without approval? You get fined. It went on and on like this. Now, the community could run for the HOA board, but the HOA board chose the president. 6 out of the 10 members on the board liked Karen, so she always kept her job. Her husband was in the medical field, so he made a lot of money. It got to a point, too, where she was called Queen Karen in the neighborhood and her dishing out HOA fines. Now, I used to go in person to collect the rent because the people that rented my house were good friends of mine. I did this for months, so I would park my car by the front of the garage. I and my friends were having some music on, but it wasn't that loud. Queen Karen came over driving her golf cart and said,
Excuse me?
Me, yeah?
You have to turn that music down. It's too loud.
I told her that it was 8 p.m. and that music that's even loud can be played until 10. She wasn't having it and demanded that I do so. Now my friends and I kept the music going and we were enjoying ourselves. She proceeded to get angry and fined me. Now, most people will just take the abuse and pay the fine, but not me. I went to the HOA board, contested the fine, and won. From that point on, Queen Karen made it her personal mission to destroy me. She would complain and fuss about every little thing. I fought what I could, but I did end up paying for some of it. She also went after my tenants, which made things worse for me. I had to sit down with my friends one night to discuss the problem. When I parked my car, Queen Karen came over in her robe and said I have to park somewhere else. I did, because I didn't want to start anything. We see her go back into her house and embrace a man that isn't her husband. We were being nosy, and we came to the conclusion that she was cheating on her husband. Spoiler alert, she was. My friends and I told Queen Karen's husband. I'm sure he did some investigation because 3 months later they divorced and he was moving his stuff out. Now, gossip said that Queen Karen got nothing because she was the one that cheated and she didn't have a job, so she wasn't entitled to the money. From this point on, Queen Karen had a massive decline in the quality of life that she had. She sold her car and got a cheaper one, and she adopted different dressing habits. But even after the divorce, she never got a job and she was still living somewhat better than everyone else. Fast forward to 1986. In February, Queen Karen and the HOA had been giving out fines for very obscure things and increased monthly dues. Having trash cans out a couple of hours early or after the trash man left would result in a fine. Targeting people that had older or dirty cars goes on and on. Me and the other people in the community were sick of this crap that she and the HOA were pulling. So at the next meeting, we voiced our concerns. Queen Karen said that the community had been falling behind on repairs and that the dues and increases in fines were necessary, especially if people weren't maintaining their own property. She said that it was in the yearly budget report and that we should have read it. The other angry residents and I go and read the statement. Now, none of us had read it because we took it as junk mail and disregarded it. But we read the whole statement cover to cover. Queen had increased the HOA budget 15%, and where that extra money was going remained unknown. We went over to her house the next day and demanded to know where the extra money was being spent, but she refused several times. She closed the door and went back to watching TV. We filed a joint lawsuit to find out where the money was going. In June, we found out. Cue the revenge. Queen Karen was living off HOA fines and dues. The increase is because she was running out of money. She still didn't have a job, so she embezzled from the HOA so she wouldn't have to get a job. She gets busted. We called the police for her embezzling the money. She was charged with fraud and extortion. The neighbors and I filed a joint lawsuit against Karen to get reimbursement as well. Because she had no money, so she had to mortgage her house to pay us all. She later went to federal prison for 6 years with no parole. Because she went away, no one was paying on her house. The bank foreclosed on it, and it was bought by someone else. So when she got out in 1992, she was homeless. Honestly, the majority of us didn't want to ruin her life like this. Had she toned down the excessive fines, we would have let her be. But she had to double down and steal from us because she didn't want to get a job like everyone else. Edit. Okay, I didn't think that I would have to explain this, but no, I didn't call Queen Karen a Karen in 1985. I just used the name here because I've been told that's what you call an undesirable, noisy lady. I can't use her real name for privacy, so I named her that for the purpose of this story. What do you think of HOAs? Do you like them or not? Please let us know.
Oh, I love the HOA, and I love reporting my neighbors to them.
Am I the jerk for taking my daughter's violin away? My daughter, who's 15, and I, who am 38, moved into my boyfriend, who's 56, home a few months ago. We've been dating since March, and I wanted to take the next step in our relationship. When we moved in, all I asked of my daughter was that she respect that this was my boyfriend's home and to be respectful towards him. As with practically all apartments in New York City, the space is limited. Therefore, every time my daughter practices her violin, everyone else can hear. This has proved to be an annoyance to my boyfriend, and one of his house rules is that she practice when he's not home. Flash forward to last week, I wake up to her playing away. My boyfriend is already at his desk working on a project for work, and he says he's so annoyed and can't focus right now. My boyfriend goes in her room and asks if she forgot the house rules. She retorts that she has a virtual audition in a couple hours and needed to practice. I had told her to not wait until the last minute to practice, but she did so anyway. It was 7, and my boyfriend's work presentation was at 9. My daughter's audition was at 10. So I tell her to wait until he leaves the house and she'll still have time to warm up. We leave her room, and soon after, I hear her plucking the strings and obviously moving her bow. My boyfriend goes in again, and she tells him to go to the lobby and work there. I don't like my daughter's tone. She also clearly wasn't going to stop making noise, so I end up taking her violin and bow away until my boyfriend leaves for work. My daughter is so mad that she's shaking when I give her the stuff back. She says she needed to do more than warm up and threw a tantrum before her audition. Now it's a week later, and she found out she didn't make it into the orchestra. She has locked herself into her room and calls her stepfather evil and doesn't talk to me at all. Am I the jerk? I was reacting to her disobeying a clear directive from me. She was also disrespecting the man I love by kicking him out of his own home. The lobby of our apartment is used a lot and poses a health risk to my boyfriend, and he needs to give 100% at his job. Also, my daughter had plenty of time to practice before the day of. Are you on the mom's side or the daughter's side? Please let us know.
I would make a snide remark here, but I can't because I'm actually heartbroken for that girl.
Tried saving a guy $500 at an amusement park. He didn't want to listen. I worked at an amusement park as a ticket supervisor. This was the time of the year where they would have certain events. It was one of the biggest attractions all year, so let's call it Big Cheap Attraction X. So one of the ways to bring in more revenue was to charge $5 to get into this attraction. Subsequently, if you purchase this ticket for $5, you can buy additional attraction tickets, one of our many other attractions, for an additional $5 per attraction. Normally, the other attraction tickets were $20 each. If you wanted to go to one of the other attractions, it would be cheaper to buy the ticket for $5 for attraction X and then do an add-on for the extra $5 to get to any of the other attractions. Okay, so I've laid out the groundwork. This is where the malicious compliance comes into play. I was a supervisor of the cashier's department. We were pretty busy, so I decided to take up a bank and a computer to sell tickets. I come from a very frugal family, so I always try to help people get the better deal, and I always tell my employees to tell the other guests about the better deal. Our main goal was to have people have a good time so they would want to come back. This guy comes up to me. He and his family want to go to a completely different attraction. He has about 20 people in his party, so I already know the price was going to rack up. I pulled up the price of exactly what he asked. It was around $700. I said, listen, we're running a promotion today. If you buy ticket X for $5, we can get you the other tickets for around $250 total. The guy told me, I don't want you to sell me anything that I don't want. I said, listen, I know you said you don't want this. If I sell this to you for $5, I have access to sell you the other tickets for $5 as well. If you don't want it, I can't give you that price. I said, listen, I don't care if you go or not to X. Do you want to pay $250 today or $700 today? He yelled at me and said, I don't want anything that I don't need. Just give me my tickets. I don't want to buy X. All right, sir, that'll be $700. He reluctantly paid $700. About 30 minutes and a CVS receipt later, he comes back asking to talk to my manager. I call my general manager and he comes out and asks what the problem is. The guy said I overcharged him for tickets. My general manager asked if I offered him attraction X, which gives them the better deal to the tickets. The smirk on my face when the guy has to look me in the eyes and say he refused ticket X because he didn't want it. And the look on the general manager's face when I laid out the conversation word for word in front of him, he could not deny that I tried helping him in every possible way. The general manager asks, what do you want us to do here, sir? I want to go see attraction X, plus the others. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.